Oh, fingers crossed. Oh, I am sweating a lot. Whew. All right. All right, guys. Sorry about that. So I jinxed myself completely on this, man. I said everything's running good with the stream, and then at that point, I killed myself on the stream. I guess just these apps don't like it when you go past like the 3-hour mark. It's just they get like real dicey with the stuff. So sorry, I apologize. These are the tricks of the trade, I guess, with this. So we just got to have to deal with knowing after 3 or 4 hours the Streamlabs stuff can't hang in there. I got this on a new computer I bought, right? Badass computer. I went to the nines on it. I've got no other applications running on this computer but Streamlabs. I'm not running anything in the background, so I'm trying to get this so juiced up to where everything runs into the front, but it's just weird. I don't know what to do. Please repeat the last 25 minutes. Yeah, I'm sorry, guys. So yeah, we're going to probably miss a few people here as we get people back up and running. I'm going to go back and see if I can find a little bit of where we were at on the chat, but ask some questions here. I'm going to keep an eye on you guys as well and see what you guys got as far as questions. I do apologize for that, but we're trying this new Streamlabs OBS thing here today, so I knew there might be a couple of things they're up and brown. Emma Brown, just repeat everything you said the last 20 minutes. I wasn't saying a lot. I realized the mic was now pretty quick. Den says, do you think we should trade for Quentin Williams? I would love to trade for Quentin Williams if the Jets were willing to give up on him, but he's just a top, I think, 10 pick a year ago. So I don't know how willing they're going to be able to give up on him for a second-round pick, let's say. It might cost you 2 second-rounders to get him. Would I be willing to at that point? I might be hard-pressed to do that because more of the issue and problem is for our defensive ends on the outside. That's where we really do need the help at this point. So getting another defensive tackle in when you've already got now Poona Ford, Jaron Reed, Snacks Harrison, Brian Monet. Yeah, it helps. It's a good guy in there. He's an upgrade in there, but you're still now ignoring the defensive ends to a bit of a degree. So Ted Brogan, by the way, thank you for that extra donation. I know I missed you on that one, man, so sorry about that. Nas Smith as well, thank you for yours if you're in here. I missed your donation. That's my bad, guys. We're trying to work through these kinks, so I'm hoping eventually this thing holds on, but I don't understand what the problem is. When you got a new computer with no viruses and no bugs, it should work. What is your update as far as who we can trade for on the defensive line? The number one items I've gone to, Brendan, it would be Texans got 3 guys: Whitney Merciless, J.J. Watt, Jacob Martin. That'd be they're kind of the first off the top of my head because that's one team that's going to start bailing and start switching, and they've got to get a general manager in there, but they certainly need to start bringing in some resources quick. Those guys probably wouldn't cost a lot. I wouldn't think any of them would cost a second-round pick. But you could potentially get one of those guys, Jarquise McKinley, Atlanta Falcons, guy that was drafted in the first round a couple years ago. I'm not as high on some of the other options that are out there. To me, and part of what we talked about in this stream a little bit, Brendan, is it's a better option at that point to go for the Nate Irving, to go for, to me, Clay Matthews. Those are guys that are going to give you the same kind of production without having to trade the draft capital to go out there and get them. Jeffrey, we are back. Sorry, we're working on the new software here today. I thought it would work good, but I'm going to have to make some adjustments here and do some troubleshooting. Tough thing, too, is they don't let you troubleshoot with offline videos on this. You have to go live, which makes it really hard because I sort of have to test this live with you guys. I can't do as much in the background to just see if I can rent a roll. But we're going good for 3 hours, and then the thing just kind of cut out. Kind of a bummer. Carl, I tried calling you. Funny. Nice. Totally not Jake. What is up? And Emmett, what's up, man? I'm good. All right. Did you see that Bobby won't retire until we wear black and green uniforms? Yeah, I don't think that's going to be with Bobby's determination on when he retires. I think he's going to retire a little bit earlier than that. I don't think we're going to be able to wear the black uniforms because the NFL only allows you 2 offsets. We got the wolf grays and the lime greens. So I just don't think that the NFL is going to be open to allowing an extra uniform. They won't even let us wear the 80s silver stuff, which I'd love to see. D-Boy says, if you could give DK a nickname, what would it be? Oh my God, man. I can't think of that just off the fly, D-Boy. Because it's got to be awesome. It's got to be legit. I'll think of one, though, D-Boy. We got to come up with they've tried certain stuff that's just not quite fit yet, but he needs something, man. He needs something. And Megatron's got that name, then we got to come up with something else. But he's earned himself a nickname. Sometimes receivers, it kind of comes and goes. Some guy like Jerry Rice never got a nickname. Julio Jones never got a nickname. It seems like some guys get it, some guys don't. Den says, do you see us making any sort of trade before the deadline? I'd like to think so, Den, but some of what's got to have to happen here is we need more teams to fall out of this. We need more teams to start to feel like they're not contenders. Because right now you've got too many teams that are in it that really shouldn't feel like they're in it. I mean, the NFC East alone all feels like they have a chance in that division, and we should see a couple of those teams actually being willing to offload guys, but they're not. And you can look at similar situations throughout other divisions in this league right now, which just reduces the amount of potential players you could go out and grab. It's a really tiny, itty-bitty list right now, and it's not 1 week further than where we were last week. It's not gotten any fuller. If anything, it's almost thinner in certain degrees, because I thought at this point Philadelphia would be out of it, but they're only a game out of first place at this point. They're absolutely dancing. So it's not necessarily a given at this point that we do make the move. But I would like to see it, Den. I'd love to see this team go for it, not just wait for tomorrow, not have their 3-year plan and stay locked into that 3-year plan. Have the plan for this year right now. This year right now, you're undefeated. For the first time in franchise history, you're 5-0, with a quarterback in the middle of his prime, with a team with a ton of talent, but with a couple of holes that need some filling. If there's a bigger sign that you need to go out and make those moves as your Schneider, I don't know what it is. Brendan says, I would like to see Brandon Graham. Am I wrong for that? Brandon Graham's a great player, Brendan, but he's one of these guys that seems like a legacy guy for the Eagles, a guy that's been there for years and years and years, through the Super Bowl win, but he's been a guy that's been pretty valuable for them as a player, all-around good player. I don't think that they're looking at potentially moving him. Derek Barnett would be probably the more likely of the two pass rushers that they would look to move, but again, they've got to feel like they're out of it. And if they feel like they have a chance at the division, if they're one game out of the division win, whether we all want to sit here and laugh at them and say they got no chance, they could be looking at, hey, if we go on a magical run at the end of the year, we get in the playoffs, anything can happen in the playoffs. Look at the Seahawks a couple of years ago, went 7-9 and then beat the previous Super Bowl winners in the New Orleans Saints at home against Seattle, because you get the home game if you're a division winner. So they think they're in it. They don't think they're out of it. And that's where it gets tough here in trying to give you guys great examples of players we can go trade for, because there's just not much there. White2K says, Bobby Wagner looked bad last game. That play where he shot the gap, young Bobby makes that play. I agree. Bobby's not where he was before. He's in a stage at this point where he's not exactly at the 2018 level of Defensive Player of the Year play. He's not that high level he was, where he had probably his best year of his career. He's also not last year's play, where he was at his worst probably year of his career, 2019. He's somewhere probably right in the middle, still playing at an all-pro level, still playing as a fine football player. He's not the problem on that defense right now. The problem on that defense has been that defensive line first and foremost, and then the secondary is the secondary aspect of that. The linebacking play has actually been overall okay, with the exception of a guy like Cody Barton. Brendan says, would Whitney Marcellus be a Leo? He'd be a perfect Leo for you, Brendan. That'd be exactly where you'd slide him in at, the Leo end. Jeffrey Huggins, Rams didn't look good today. Niners were Cardinals got a little something. Who do you feel is the threat to us in the division? P.S. Sent you a $5 super chat before your sound went out. Jeffrey, I'm so sorry I missed your $5 super chat. Thank you so much for putting that out there. I missed a couple of your guys on that. I really do appreciate your guys' donations. You're really kind with that stuff. I mean, you guys are always awesome. All of you are, from Randall and Barry and everything. But thank you so much for your donation, Jeffrey. I do really appreciate it. Here's where I stand right now as far as the division goes. To me, the Rams remain the threat to me. I know they didn't play well today. Today seemed more like a game where they weren't ready to play. They looked sort of half out of it. I sort of compared it earlier in the show to like the early 10 a.m. games we used to see from the Seahawks, where it seemed like through the first half of the game, they're just kind of sleepwalking and not into it. It seemed like I've seen some games this year with the Rams where they had a lot more fire in their belly than they did this game against the Niners. I don't know if maybe they just thought we can kind of sleepwalk our way through this. The Niners aren't a very good team right now. Maybe they just thought it was going to be an easy game for them. But the Niners on the other side of it looked like they were fighting for their season. They looked like they were scratching and clawing and fighting. And so it was really a difference in what you were seeing between the two teams from that standpoint. I don't know if I take from that the lesson to be that the Rams aren't a contender. They're not a problem. They've got some weaknesses on that team. They don't have the depth they've had. They've paid a price on some of the moves they've had to make over the last few years, where they've gone for today and not given a crap for tomorrow, and now tomorrow has arrived. But with that said, still a lot of talent. I still like what they're doing offensively, schematically, and the adjustments they've made from their Super Bowl winning season. going from, I think they went from 12 personnel all the time in the Super Bowl winning season. Now they're 11 personnel with the 2 tight ends. So much more is off the play action stuff now with Goff, and they're very successful at it. I don't trust the Niners long term. I think that the stuff with the injuries and the Super Bowl hangover will eventually just too much for them. Eventually will take them under. It might take a little bit of time for this to fully play out. But that injury situation is not really getting better for them. They're not going to get Bosa back. They're not getting Solomon Thomas back. I don't know if D Ford's coming back for them. I don't know if Richard Sherman's coming back from them. They're a team that's got a lot of injuries, still some talent, but I think that we can get on top of them with as many injuries as they've had, kind of like they were able to get on top of us in that second game against them. And let's remember, I think that we're a really tough matchup for the Niners in the way that we're constructed defensively. I don't think that's a good matchup for them. It wasn't last year versus other opponents they played against. And then when it comes to the Cardinals, Jeffrey, I thought they were way more of a threat for us than where they were at the start of the year. They look like they've got some issues offensively, which I didn't anticipate. Hopkins has been sensational for them, everything they thought and more, and yet the offense isn't really taking the step forward we thought they would take from last year. It seems kind of on par from what it was last year, sort of just plateauing. Kenyon Drake has not been somewhat of, I thought, the game changer for them, being a pure scheme fit running back for what they want to do with the spread formation. And then for me, Jeffrey, the thing that kills this most is they lost Chandler Jones, the guy that's been a game wrecker against Seattle since the day he arrived with the Cardinals. The guy's played, I think, in just about every game for them up until this injury. So them losing him for the year, that's a big, big hit for their pass rush. That is really going to hurt them in their pass rush. This makes them a little bit less of a threat to me, Jeffrey. I still think over the next 5 games we go 3-2. One game against the Bills we lose, and I think we lose one of these division games. But I think we go 3-2 over the next 5 games, and then when we go 6-0 down the stretch. That's my prediction. But I think it's our division to win, though, Jeffrey. It's our division to win at this point, especially with the Rams now giving us a 2-game buffer here. That certainly helps. Boom Shakalaka, Schneider making a trade soon. I'd love to believe that he's making a trade soon, but we haven't heard any rumors. Usually Seattle is in on everything, right? That's their big claim to fame. We're in on every deal, but we hardly execute anything. Well, we usually hear those rumors of those trades. We usually hear the little mumblings, the musings, but we're hearing nothing. You know what I hear? I hear dead silence. And when I'm seeing that, and I'm not looking and hearing anything else, it's making me a little reticent to make a prediction that there's going to be a trade. We're getting down to the wire here. There's only a couple weeks left. I hope they do, but I'm not certain. Videomaker says we need Ryan Kerrigan. Maybe Videomaker. The one thing is with Ryan is he looks a little bit washed out a bit. A little bit washed out, just to me. He hasn't necessarily shown up this year and been the same player he's been in years past. Brendan asks, isn't J.J. Watt washed? I don't think he's completely washed. I think some of what's going on here with J.J. as far as his a little bit less productivity has to do with that Houston Texans defense as a whole being a little bit less than it's been. Linebackers are not great. Cunningham's good, but the other guys aren't as good. And then their secondary is really pretty bad. So I think that you're asking the guy to play a lot of snaps. He's out on the field a lot, getting worn down, an older player. Maybe he doesn't look as good. Don't think he's fully washed. I think he just needs to get into a rotational role where you can limit some of his snaps a bit. Gary Machete says, I'd take Clay. And I'd take Clay as well, Gary Machete. What we need is what I've pointed to with the pass rush is we need guys with high pass rush win rate. And for those of you who don't know, pass rush win rate is judged by 2.5 seconds. Can you generate pressure in under 2.5 seconds, get to the quarterback, get him off his spot, get him to move? It's a very hard thing to do in the NFL, especially with all the short passing game that's been implemented across the board. If you can be one of those guys up and around that 10% mark, then you can be an effective pass rusher in this game. And I think that, if I'm not mistaken, Clay Matthews has always been up around that 10% mark. I don't think we've got anybody on the roster right now who's even hovering near 10% as we stand right now. So I absolutely think he'd be an upgrade over what we have rushing the passer currently. Emma Brown, I heard you speak on J.J. Watt. I never considered him because I figured he was a Texan legacy untouchable, but I would dig that. Really think it would only take a second. I think it would take a second at the top end of things right now, Emmett. I don't think that there's a lot of value in the trade for J.J. Watt. He's not the player he was, so it's not going to necessarily fetch that high margin of return. Would I do it for a second? I probably still would, because I think that it would just give the defense that extra bit they need on that line. It really would. Do I think the Texans would be open to it? Yes. Why? two different reasons on this, Emmett. Number one, if this is J.J. Watt's last year and he's going to retire, why not give him a chance to go play for a ring if you know you're not going to give him the chance there, first off. The second part is that they've had their future decimated by Bill O'Brien. The trades he's made, the draft capital he's given up, the talent that he's lost out the back end, it's going to harm them for years to come, and they need to start getting up ahead of that train right now, before the next head coach, before the next general manager. And that comes by way of offloading salary and onloading draft capital. These are the reasons I think that you could potentially go out and make that deal. Is it likely to happen? Not necessarily, but I'd love to see them give it a shot. Brandon Ackrick says, what would Jacob Martin cost? I would imagine he would cost you probably a 5th or 6th rounder in draft compensation. Y2K, DK equals Optimus Prime for short. I love it. Optimus Prime's pretty good. We'll get some suggestions here in the chat. We got Emmett with the DK, the monolith. I like that too. D-Boy's dad, how you doing, D-Boy dad? D-Boy's dad. What's up, man? Cowboys going tomorrow. Very important game for you guys. He asked, do you see the Cowboys winning tomorrow? I do see them winning in a shootout. I think it's at Dallas. I think Dallas is going to be able to supply enough. I was encouraged, D-Boy's dad, of what I was finally seeing from DeMarcus Lawrence. He finally has given you guys a little flash of light, a little spark. He was giving you seemingly nothing after that $20 million contract a year that you guys gave him. And you need him with Alden showing up on the other side, because if you have an offense that can be a super offense with two defensive ends on either side that are kind of both oscillating between who gets to the quarterback on a given play, you can kind of overcome a lot of problems defensively if you can do that. And you see that along with them eventually still getting back Leighton Vander Esch maybe at some point in this year. But yeah, I do. I think the Cardinals have seemingly been trending a little bit downward. I think that Dalton, the full week of practice, he's going to look even better than he looked last week. And I think Dalton's a pretty close player to what Dak is. I think he's got everything that Dak's got as a thrower. He just doesn't have some of his mobility maybe a little bit. But I think you guys win that game. I got you by 3 points in that game. It's going to be close. It's going to be a shootout, but I'll take the Cowboys by 3. Carl says, just saw a post. It's crazy. We rooted for the Niners and Brady in the same day. It is crazy. The world has gone upside down, Carl. It's crazy town right now. Fiji Mark, how much would Kerrigan cost? Kerrigan couldn't cost more at this point than I would guess a 5th or 6th round pick either, right in that same range, if not a little bit less. He is carrying some salary, so I don't know that you'd be able to, I don't think he'd cost you a lot. The question does come down to this too, though, Fiji, is in that, are they willing to give him up? Does Washington feel like they're completely out of it this year, that they've got no chance at that division? Or do they find themselves in the same boat as Philadelphia and saying, we could maybe do this. There's no runaway team here. There's no team that's for certain going to take this division. If we just turn a couple things around, we just make a couple moves, maybe Alex Smith rounds into shape a little bit better for us than what Dwayne was doing. Maybe they talk themselves into it. Doesn't make them right, but maybe they potentially talk themselves into it. Jeffrey says, how soon maybe we see AB and Josh Gordon on the field? And are we good enough at tight end? I would say that you're going to see I would see by week 8, we should see both of these guys. At the latest, I think it's by week 10, because the worst case scenario for Josh Gordon to me is a year suspension, which I think it happened right around week 10 or so last week. So that would put him back around by that point. And AB is on an 8-game suspension, so he comes back off week 8. And I do expect the Seahawks to probably sign Antonio Brown when he comes off of suspension at that time. It's kind of a bit of an open rumor that's out there. Gary Machete, what's up? Arazos, is Ryan Kerrigan still an option? And if we were to get him, what would we have to give up? Boy, we've got a lot of love for Ryan Kerrigan in the chat. I do think it's a 5th or 6th round pick, probably. I don't know, though, that, as I'm just saying, I'm not sure that Washington wants to give him up as O's. I think that there's a chance they still feel like they're in it. Chase Young's got a bit of a groin injury he's fighting through. Maybe they feel like they want to still keep him in there and try. Carl says, I want the Cowboys to win, but still need Kyler to go off for fantasy. Well, that's going to fit right into my prediction well, doesn't it, Carl? Because I'm saying it's going to be a shootout, which gets you the points, but I do see the Cowboys winning by 3. RSOs, obviously, we give up picks because we are really low on picks this year. I'd prefer we don't give up picks if we didn't have to, but we may have to go out and get the right kind of player for this team. And if you give up a 5th or a 6th rounder, it's not the worst thing in the world at this point if you can get a guy who really does supply you some valuable pass rushing snaps at this point. You desperately need some pass rushing snaps, So it's worth it at this point, in my opinion, to give up the 5th or 6th rounder. And you've built enough of a depth on this team as we move forward the last couple of years. You've stacked up a lot of picks over the last few seasons to believe that you can maybe deal with having a little bit of a light of picks for a year here or two. Gary Machete says, Kyler against Hawks pass D right now makes me nervous. Yeah, me too. He'll definitely throw for some yards. That's for sure. I think we can get him to make a few mistakes, though, too. Y2K says, I feel with Kerrigan, too many contenders probably want him. It seems tough. A second-round pick might do it. I would no way, shape, or form spend a second-round pick on Ryan Kerrigan, and I don't know that you have that much competition out there for his services. If you were to, it's just because of what a dearth there is for pass rushers out there right now, and not necessarily because of how good he is as a player. Brendan says, I would give up anything other than a second-round pick, but if the pick is worth it, I would do it. You guys have a lot of love here for Ryan Kerrigan. I am not in the same place. If I gave up a second-round pick, I would be very upset about that. That's not good compensation to be given Washington at that point. That's a desperation move. For some people, D-Boy says that for some people, I'm not a big fan on Mayfield like other people. Is it him or is his team? How do you feel about Mayfield? Mayfield's one of the most surprising players that I've seen taken with the first overall pick, going back to, if not Jamarcus Russell, then you could go back to even the kid that they took out of Kentucky, the Cleveland Browns did back in like 2002 or something, who was another one of those guys you just went, what? And it's funny that Cleveland was the last team to take a number 1 overall quarterback like that. Very similar player. One of you guys will tell me in the chat who I'm thinking of. It's a Kentucky quarterback who's taken number 1 overall. I always thought he was limited in his mobility, which is a problem if you're going to take the number 1 overall quarterback in these kind of drafts as we move forward, because the game has moved to mobile quarterbacks. Statue quarterbacks, pocket quarterbacks are going to be very limited in the NFL as we go forward. You need guys that can play off script. You need guys that can move. He couldn't do that, really. He got away with stuff in college because they weren't quite as athletic, but as we can see on that next level, he's not able to get away from those guys in the same kind of way. I have these same sort of questions a little bit with the kid in Miami that was just drafted, where he sometimes thinks he can get away from stuff that he can't quite get away from. The other problem with me and Baker, and this is always the thing I'm going to harp on with top 10 first-round quarterbacks, where's the arm strength? It needs to be the number 1 quotient for me with a quarterback when I'm looking to select him. He's got to have the ability to make all the throws on the football field. He needs other attributes as well. It's not just that. But if you're going to just throw all these other attributes of, he's a gamer, or he's got a big brain, he can read defenses, he's got mobility, but he doesn't have arm strength or isn't able to make touch throws or certain other, then to me, I'm not going to take him number 1 overall, much less in the top 10. Those are the big problems for me with Mayfield when you look at picking him as the number 1 overall quarterback, especially in the draft when I thought that there was a lot more solid quarterbacks you could have taken in that slot. I'm not high on Baker's upside as we go forward. Y2K says, to counter your point, we are set up to make runs the next few years as well. We don't want to hamstring ourselves next year either. If we play right now, we can have multiple Super Bowls. I'm very hesitant, Y2K, to get into the mentality of planning for multiple Super Bowls. Plan for one Super Bowl one, deal with the other ones down the road. And the issue to me, and it's a fair point from what you're saying, Y2K, but the issue to me is when you get into the 2 and the 3 year plan and protecting yourselves into the future years. The problem with that is that you can sometimes not always go for today and take advantage of the today. We can make an argument last year that if they had dealt with the pass rush appropriately in the offseason, not going after a done Ziggy Ansah or having to stretch and grab Klein at the last second just to plug the dam, the hole in the dam at that point that you have the defensive line, your potential last year could have gotten much higher. But your reticence to go for it in that moment, your hesitance to kind of just stay in your lane and keep things on your 2 and 3 year plan maybe cost you last year in one of Russell's prime years. So now we find ourselves in the next year of Russell's prime year. And you're going to now talk about having this 2 and 3 year plan. You're going to talk and tell me about having the 5th most amount of cap space as we move into next offseason. And I get a little discouraged by that. I don't want to have the 5th most of cap space moving into next offseason. It's nice to have, but I'll sacrifice a little of that for now. Because I don't want to come up a couple inches short. If I come up a couple inches short, that tells me that we could have gotten it by making a move or two. And I have worries this year that we could find ourselves in that place, and I hope we don't. But that is my worry with that Y2K, is you get too much into the long-term plan and you get lost on the today and what you can do right now. The NFC is weaker this year. The pathway to that first-round bye is never Check, check, check. Oh, I got it back. I got it back. Did I get it back? Is it working? Check, check, check. Check, check, check. Check, check, check. Are we still... Talk to me, chat. Are we back? Can you guys hear me? It says my mic's back, so if it's not... All right. Can you hear me? Okay, so I fixed my mic. I found a way to fix it on the live stream where we don't have to end this and talk it back. So, woo! I just got to unplug it and replug it back in. So we got to fix. D-Mac, you're the man. Thank you for letting me know on that, brother. Sorry, I missed it there. God. Okay, so we got to fix when the mic goes out, guys. So I don't have to reset this from now on. I can just pull it out and in, and it'll go back online, which I couldn't do before when I ran the live stream. So I know it's rough, but we're making progress here. Let me get back up here to where we were on the comments, and I was a bit behind. Jason McEward, welcome on in, Jason. Says, boring Sunday today. Bobby Wagner is the man, favorite player ever, just jumped in. Well, Jason, it was a bit of a boring game. I was telling you guys last week, we play these games week in and week out. We play these games where it's crazy town. It's a wide range of emotions. It's like a soap opera or some great movie you've seen where you're up at the height of heights and the lowest of lows, and then you're uncertain, and then finally gratification and jubilation. And it's like other teams don't play games this way. Most games are very boringly played out. One team gets on another team. A couple plays happen here or there, but then it just kind of ends out. We've been really lucky in having these classic games, 3, 4, 5 games a year that we get to watch that are truly difference maker type games that are just edge of your seat. And I always tell you guys, appreciate it, because you don't always get to have them. It's not always going to be here. You're not always going to get these kind of games. I know it puts your guys' heart and tests your guys' heart, but you just got to ride the wave, man. I love it. Ted Brogan, Island Girls, Brandon, better or worse than the mainland? Better. Better by far. And it's not even close. I'm loving me my island. Island girl, what you doing with your island man? Lou Scarlett, do you see us beating the Cards? I do see us beating the Cards. Jamal Adams returns to the field. Snacks Harrison is the immovable force underneath in between. In between all of them, they shut them down. We hold them to 20 points. We put up 38 points, explode. Yeah, I'm calling it. It's 2-touchdown victory. I'm feeling myself. I'm feeling confident. Boom Chocolate, Chandler Jones is big for sure. Yep, losing Chandler Jones on that defense. That if you're playing the Seahawks, and one of the reasons that the Cardinals have been such a tough matchup for us over the last few years is because we've been unable to block Chandler Jones. He's been an unblockable rebel force against us, and now we don't have to deal with him. Brandon says, I think we should give up a 6th-round pick for Martin. I also agree. I'd be willing to do that. That's a definite, easy, kind of no-brainer type move. Are they willing to do that? I don't know. They may like Martin there. They may like him long-term as a young rusher. Y2K, I mentioned this during the muted period. Outside of injuries, our team almost always improves throughout the year. It's absolutely true, Y2K. If you look through Pete Carroll over the last 10 years, I bet you'd find that 9 of those 10 years, the team has improved as the year has gone on. In those times where they haven't improved, I bet you could point to the fact that the injuries just decimated the team. So he tends to have some kind of methodical approach to this in improving the team and having them perform at peak performance at just the right time. The key is that the injuries don't upend the whole thing. Gary Machete, is Brian Schottenheimer the next head coach after Carroll? I hope not. I would not guess that would be necessarily even a likelihood of being the case at this point, Gary. I don't think so. Arazos, why has Dunbar been getting injured so often? I hate seeing Flowers out there. Well, Azos, if you look at Dunbar's career up until this point, every single year I think he's been injured. I don't think he's played 16 games through his whole career. So it's not a surprise. I think you get 10 games out of this guy. You're happy if that's what you can get out of him. You want him healthy for the playoffs. He's at least been an upgrade in there when he's been in. But you're just going to have to deal with him being dinged up a little bit. D-Boy says, my next door neighbor is a 49ers fan and said Sherman is a top 5 quarterback still. What do you think? I think last year he played at a top 5 cornerback level, but I think that D-Boy, he's probably when the shelf falls off for Sherman at the cornerback position, it's going to really fall off. It's going to be quick and it's going to be staggering. And there's a lot of reason to believe that he might be getting really close to that point. Some of it last year was his protection. He was a top 5 rated cornerback because teams weren't testing him. Well, teams weren't testing him because he's playing so well and getting so many interceptions. No, he was still being able to pick a ball off from time to time. Why? It was because Akila Witherspoon, the other cornerback on the other side, was playing league worst, one of the worst cornerbacks, if not the worst cornerback in the entire NFL. So teams were just picking on that side of the ball, play after play after play, and leaving Richard alone. So that was a little bit why he was maybe protected last year. But there's him with this injury to the calf. It's related back to his Achilles injury. This happens to these players. When they have the Achilles tear, they've got to pull the tendon down, right? And then they buckle that sucker into the back of the leg. The problem with that is that you also stretch the muscle with that. That can lead to these kind of calf injuries that we're seeing Sherman fighting through right now. Not a guarantee that he comes back this season. Brendan says, Tack McKinley for a 5 to be a rotational guy is something I could see happen. It's a very likely move that potentially happened, Brendan. Tack McKinley's got some talent. He's maybe been an underperformer, but won't cost you a lot as far as financially goes. 5th rounder may be about the right kind of thing. I think it'll even cost you a little bit less for him because I think he's a free agent at the end of the year. I don't think that they picked up his 5th year option, so he's due to be a free agent. So it might be more in the 6th, 7th round kind of role that you'd have to be looked for. But he is a guy that would be a good Leo fit for you, theoretically. Arazos says, do you see Seattle getting Dan Quinn back considering how terrible Ken Norton is? It's a possibility. It's a possibility. I'm not so certain that Dan Quinn's not going to get a head coaching job somewhere else. But I certainly think if Ken Norton ends up in this season with having given his defense now having given up the most passing yards in league history, on top of his recent history as a defensive coordinator, that's not enough to get the guy fired at that point. I don't know what is. The only thing I can think of is that Carroll takes on the ownership of it and says it was his fault because he really runs the defense, and he lets Norton off the hook because of that. Jeff Ryan says if Snacks gets going and stays healthy, you maybe add Clay Matthews and get it creative to get our pass rush and quarterback hits up, especially from where we're at the moment. It could be enough, Jeff. I mean, that alone could be enough, especially considering the fact that you maybe bring back in Taylor or Rasheem Green. Rasheem Green certainly seems likely to come back, get a stinger, and those things do eventually heal. They don't tend to be lingering things. So there is reason to believe that maybe you can still get back one of those guys and then combo that in with Clay Matthews, and that's just enough to kind of, I've said it since day one, they're trying to cobble together the pass rush, right? The key with it, though, in cobbling it together and to make your stack of a wall of a pass rush is you can't have holes in that cobble. You know, you can't be losing out on both Rasheem and LJ Collier not really being a pass rush threat and Darrell Taylor going down injury. You need kind of one of those guys to give you a little bit more. So that's where we're at right now is there's a few holes in our cobble, but they could still cobble it together by just putting a couple bricks in those holes, and that would do that. Sam Dog, the infamous, what's up, Sam Dog? Would you say we benefited from this bye week? I think this bye week, Sam Dog, came in the perfect time. Absolutely the perfect time for us this week. The reason being is that you've got the injuries that have mounted up. You've got reinforcements coming that needed that extra week still to be able to come back around. And as well, you're just about to head into your toughest stretch of your schedule. This next 5-game stretch is that tough stretch. So all those factors coming together, I think it's good. There's times we've had the bye at the end of the season, and ideally you'd say, well, we want at the end of the season. But we've also seen that upend our momentum, haven't we? We'll be on a 5, 6, 7-game winning streak, and then here comes the bye, and it sort of throws players out of this, just this kind of mode they've gotten into where it's just their schedule's set and everything's on point. So there's a part of me that likes that, especially if eventually we get the bye at the end of the season. It will all come at just the perfect amount of time when you need it. So I do. I think the bye was a good spot. Y2K says in basketball teams, they'll take bad contracts and get a pick to take the contract. Why don't rebuilding teams do that in the NFL? Well, I'm going to let that thing drive past to get some coffee. 1 second. Sorry, folks, thirsty. The reason that you don't see players doing that or teams can't do the same thing they could do in basketball to offload player salaries is that the commissioner's office kind of stays over the top of this and really watches this closely. So Jadeveon Clowney, there was a move that was tried to pull off, I think, between the Ravens, the Browns, and at the start of the year, where the Browns were going to sign Clowney, but then they would flip it to the Ravens, and then they would eat the bonus money that was in the contract, which would reduce down the cap hit to the Ravens. The league put a kibosh on that and said, no, you're not doing that. The other factor as to why you don't see that happening more often, Y2K, is that the bottom running teams that tend to be the teams with the cap space, your Cincinnati Bengals or even your Browns, those are teams that also seem to be trying to always turn a profit. They're always trying to, kind of just juice up a little bit. And so they're not as willing to have that cap space eaten up, even if it's to accumulate draft picks. They're trying to make some money. It's sad to say, but there are those teams in the league that just don't, look at the team as like, a billionaire that's bought it as his little fun toy, but actually is this revenue generating deal. I never understand it personally, because you get such a return on your investment on a team when you buy them versus when you end up selling them. It's huge the amount of money you make, but you'll just probably never see that kind of same situation just because of those two factors, the cheapness of the low end teams and the commissioner's office always sitting over the top, going, no, you will not. Y2K says if Dalton does awesome, it might get interesting in the Cowboys offseason. Oh, it's why I was hating it for Dak, is Dak's really been put in a situation now where he's going to have to take less money when he shouldn't have to, when he was the good soldier, when he played on that third round contract. He was due to be paid like all these young quarterbacks have been paid before him, and the Cowboys went cheap for the first time ever. They did him dirty, in my opinion. I know not everybody will agree, but I think they did him dirty. Gary Machete, does anyone envision Dak playing for the Cowboys again? I don't. I don't either, Gary, unless he just gets pushed into such a point that he has to take the discounted contract because there's not a market for him out on the open market. And I hope that doesn't happen to him. I hope he doesn't go back and play for the Cowboys because, again, for the reasons I just said, I think they did him a little dirty. Y2K, Dak should go play for the Rams. I think the Rams really like Jared. They like Goff in the combination with McVay. And I think that they're going to stay with that combination for years to come. And no, I don't. Goff just signed a deal, Y2K. His deal isn't up. He just signed his new big-time deal. So they're right in the middle of having to eat. They wouldn't be able to eat that. They've got to ride with that one. D-Boy says, should Jamal sit out one more week or should he play this week? It all depends on what the state is of that groin, D-Boy. If the groin still is bothering him and he's still fighting through and managing it, and it could be better by one more week, the doctors could say we see this significantly improving if he does get the one more week, then yes. If it's not going to significantly improve by one more week of rest and he's still kind of fighting through it, then maybe it's just something he's going to fight through because maybe it's something he's just going to have to deal with for weeks to come, as opposed to maybe you have to shut him down for 4 more weeks to make it completely healed, which maybe from Seattle's standpoint, heading into these games just isn't an option. Brendan says, imagine Antonio Brown. Don't even say that I won't sleep tonight. Oh, Lord, AB to Seattle. No way, he'd be a dream. I'm telling you guys, this is a likelihood scenario of happening at this point. It's a likelihood Antonio Brown comes here. Whether you hate him, whether you love him, whether you see the greatness of him being here, it really is irrelevant. It's the likelihood is Vegas has got odds. We're the front runners. A couple of reasons for this. If he was going to be signed by other teams, they would have wanted him at the start of the season, not midway through the year. They'd want the full complement of his services for a full season. That's not happening. That reduces down the number of teams that are going to be in play for his services mid-season this year. Take out all the non-contenders, they're gone. That removes more teams. And now within the contenders, remove the contenders that he'd want to potentially play for, because he's got to also look at the situation is when he gets live after week 8, he needs to hit the ground running because he's trying to play for that contract next year, not this year's contract, his one last contract, which he'd get this offseason. So that being the case, further restricts down the amount of teams he could be looking at. I know his brother plays for the Ravens. I know the Ravens could use some receiving help. But does he look at Lamar Jackson and go, Lamar Jackson's going to get the most out of my skill set for the remaining 8 games of the season? No, probably not. I think he's coming here. I think he's coming here. Do I go to the Hawks games a lot? And I would go to occasionally. I don't know if you're asking me. I think you might be asking them. Shane Hafner, what's up, Shane? Aaron Rodgers just lost his MVP battle with Russ. Ha, ha, ha. What a horrible game for Aaron. I love it. Maybe. I don't know if one game makes it. He still has a really light schedule to run through, Shane. I mean, if you look at the Packers' remaining games, unless you think the Bears are a contender, they've got a real easy path to just kind of dominate all the way through and put up a lot of big-time empty stats. But we'll see. I think Russell is definitely the strong, firm front runner at this point. Owen Todoro says, What would you like to see Jamal as a pure blitzer or like 70% blitz and 30% coverage? Because Ryan Neal has proven himself. I'd love to see both on the field. Well, let's unpack this, Owen. First off, when it comes to Jamal Adams as a blitzer, I like him as a blitzer. I like him going downhill and attacking. I would probably try to maybe mix in a little more of the 60-40 split where you got him blitzing 60 and 40% coverage because he's actually very good in zone. He's not a great man-on-man guy, but he's a very, very, very good zone guy. He can really drive on the ball in zone coverage. The question comes down to, for me, with Ryan Neal and getting him on the football field once Jamal Adams comes back is who are you taking off of the football field? That's always the big question you got to ask yourself. Ryan Neal's not going to be able to play the will linebacker role of Cody Barton. He's not going to play it better than Cody Barton is. He's not big enough. So that's not really an option there. Are you taking Ugo Amadi off the field? Ugo Amadi's been your best cornerback. Does that really make a lot of sense to take him off the field for a guy that's a natural safety to then ask that safety to play a slot corner? Probably not. Likewise, you're not moving Jamal over to slot and then moving Neal into strong safety. Are you taking KJ off the field in his all-pro season? Are you taking Bobby off the field in an all-pro season? No. So it's got to come down to just more than just saying we got to get Neal on the field. You got to say, but where do you put Neal? And I love how he's played, but also remember, folks, that as nice as it is to have Neal on the field, we don't have a lot of safety depth right now. We don't. It's kind of light. So it's kind of nice having a strong safety on the bench who we know is a player who can play should anything happen to Jamal Adams, who's gotten a couple of dinged up injuries this year so far. So I would probably see Neal on the bench, but that's okay. He still gives us a good solid guy to bring off the bench if we need him, and I think we probably will. Brendan Eichrick says the most I'd give up for Kerrigan would be a fourth. I agree with you, Brendan. That would be my top end for him as well, and I'd struggle even at that point, but I probably will end on a fourth rounder. Tim Couch, Jason McEward, you are the man. Thank you so much. Tim Couch was the guy the Cleveland Browns drafted, and at the time he drafted him, I remember thinking, what? Playing at Kentucky, not against the top end of the scale, spread formation stuff, really, really weak arm. And then you're asking him to go into Cleveland, which has adverse weather conditions, winds and whatnot, and he's going to try to throw through those elements. I thought the same thing with Baker Mayfield. How is that going to work? How is he going to pull that off? I just didn't quite get how that worked. You understand with the limited arm strength guys, when you get him into a dome, you can wrap your head around it a little bit. You put Drew Brees in a dome, he can be pretty good in his prime through years and years. One of all-time great quarterbacks. You put a guy like Matt Ryan in a dome, he can have an MVP season. But you put those guys out in the elements for the majority of their games, they're not the same quarterback when they're throwing into those elements. Boom Shakalaka says, Ryan Neal, ball hawk. Could he play corner, get Trey off the field? No, you're not going to put Ryan Neal out as an outside corner. I know Trey Flowers has played bad guys, but Ryan Neal's a safety. He's going to look even worse than Trey Flowers does if you go ask him to play outside corner for you. Boom Shakalaka says, I gave Trey slack in the offseason, but he's just not that good. I agree. I was one of the big proponents of Trey. I thought he'd take a step forward this season. I wondered how much of an upgrade Dunbar was really going to be over the top of him. But he's actually gone even a little worse from what his play was last year. He's de-evolved from what he was, which is really saddening to see. I think it's a confidence thing with him, and I think he's just kind of gotten his confidence shot a little bit. Okay. What's up? All right. Whoever called him, thank you so much. D-Mac called me. You guys give D-Mac his props. And by the way, D-Mac has got a new, as you can see in the chat here, D-Mac Talks Seahawks is a new channel D-Mac has just put together. We are going to be doing some combination stuff during the week more often here. If you guys aren't already gone over there and subscribed to his channel, please do, because you're going to see me and him. He's got some great on-the-field knowledge as far as, getting into some of the intricacies of techniques. He knows players backwards and forwards. So please do, if you're not already subscribed to him or not subscribed to me, subscribe to us both. It's free. It's not going to cost you anything. And over the next good amount of time, next few years here, we're going to kick out some really awesome Seahawks content. Y2K, any thoughts on Jay Jefferson, K. Cole, Ty Fulgham, or Tay Patrick? Not a lot of thoughts as of yet with those guys. Sorry, Y2K. I haven't seen enough tape on him. Justin Jefferson for the Vikings has been fantastic. Probably the best receiver of this last draft. which I thought he was going to be just a limited slot guy at the next level. I was really wondering about how effective he was really going to be, but it was saying something this last week that the Seahawks in the Vikings game was double teaming Jefferson and leaving Thielen one-on-one. And Seattle rarely double teams a guy. So if they double team a guy, it's a big admission that that guy's playing fantastic football for them to do it. But don't have enough on Cole or Fulham or Patrick. Sorry, man. D-Boy, is the NFL starting to go torso big freak athletes like DK and Henry, or are they just 1 in 1,000 special athletes? They're 1 in 1,000 special athletes, D-Boy. There's going to be maybe more of them here and there. But I don't think that it's just going to be some common theme that you see all over the place. It's really rare we get these things through. You can take a line from the Calvin Johnson to Julio Jones to now DK Metcalf, and there's always kind of one of those guys in the middle of his prime at any one moment, one of those big-bodied wide receivers. And before Calvin, it would have been Randy Moss, for instance. So I think that it's freakish. It's one of the reasons you should be so excited by having DK as we do right now, so young in his career and the player that he's going to become and is, because to have those kind of special players makes you so much better, and especially with a quarterback like Russell Wilson, who's able to take advantage of those talents. When I say the sky's the limit, it's the space is the limit. Solar system is the limit. Brendan Eichrick says, I can't wait for Jamal Adams. Same. We have not seen yet we got a taste in that first game against the Falcons of what he could do when he really was just all over the place and impacting games. I think he can do similar stuff for us as he gets more comfortable. There's been some oddity things that have happened. You've got the groin thing happens, the Patriot game where, you lose Quandre Diggs to an ejection, then Marquise Blair goes out. It's put you into these cover 2 alignments, which then had to kind of go on even into the next game with Dallas. It's not allowed him to kind of freelance out there like we wanted him to at the start of the year. So we're going to still see him unleashed at some point. At some point, we'll be able to make this happen. We just got to be a little more patient for it. Yeah, as D-Mac said, we're still working out the schedules for doing our co-stream stuff during the week. I'll try to post to the message board on it. D-Mac, I'd like, if we can, let's tell the audience right now, if you can shoot for Tuesday after I'm off work, we can go live at that point just before you maybe go into work, if I can get home a little earlier on that day. So we'll try to finalize that little schedule. We're just trying to do little quick hours in and hours out, but get multiple times throughout the week. We didn't hit our mark last week, but this week we'll try to kind of hit that a little bit, I think, and keep an eye out on that, but definitely do subscribe. Jason McGurd said, love seeing Brady beat Rodgers. Rams lost, huge loss. 2 games up. I'm greedy, though. I want home field advantage throughout the playoffs. It would have been a different year last year if we did win that last game against the 49ers at the end of the season. And Jason's absolutely correct. He's absolutely correct to have his eyeball on that home field advantage in the first round bye throughout the playoffs. People that short sell that are not paying very close particular attention to recent history. 2005, the Seattle Seahawks got the first round bye and home field advantage throughout the playoffs. They went to the Super Bowl, and the refs jobbed them out of the Super Bowl win. 2013, home field advantage throughout the playoffs, first round bye, Super Bowl. 2014, home field advantage, first round bye, Super Bowl. You see a common trait here when we get that home field advantage in the pie throughout the playoffs, especially if we can have fans in the stadium. It's going to be even bigger this year because there's only one team out of each conference gets the bye, whereas last few years it's been 2 teams out of each conference get the bye. So this year's actually a little bit different in that respect. So it's very, very important for us to get that first round bye. Absolutely on point with that, Jason. Y2KH says, I'm telling you, Madden turned Jamal Adams into an MLB in a 3-4 scheme. It's crazy. I kind of wondered and thought at the point, it was something me and D-Mac had talked about at the start of the year, of moving him into what they called this apex role. The Alabama runs with this sort of middle linebacker where the guy goes from being a strong safety in the box in a 4-3 scheme to a guy that's outside will in nickel to a guy that could be the middle linebacker in dime. And they call it the apex. And it's just a role where he's sort of that roaming guy in the middle, just there just to do damage and cause pressure at times. And you never know exactly what he's going to be doing, but because he's in the middle of the field, he's always at the center of the action. Seattle didn't really use Adams in that way. It was more of the box safety type stuff that we had kind of been sold on him in coming in. They didn't move him around as much. Some of that was by necessity of the injury situation and Marquise Blair and some of the ejection that I talked about. But I would be interested to see them maybe give him some looks at linebacker. I think he'd be pretty good at that. D-Boy says, how the Hawks Nest, how is your Madden season going? Not good. I have not been able to play very much Madden at all, D-Boy. And honestly, I can't believe to say this, but the game gets worse every year. The game gets worse. I don't know how they do it when they're copying and pasting, but somehow they find a way to make it more glitchy, more broken. There's points you play now where you just get this white screen of death for like a play, and the play's got to play out, and then the screen goes back to regular, where you're just going, how is it this year that you didn't have enough? I don't know. Awful game in the state where it currently is. I hope 2K eventually gets to take that over. Carl says him and Bobby and Brooks are unstoppable. That's a lot of speed to have there if you went that route, man. It's a lot of speed. Boom Shakalaka, you know who blocks kicks in Madden? Amadi. Well, I'd believe it. He's got some quickness. Y2K says Benson Mayo has been pretty solid. If he was a better D line and rotated in, his win rate would probably be closer to that 10% you're asking him. Like the guy ain't gonna work. Yeah, I agree with you. Y2K, I think that's one of the reasons that get him off the 90% snaps. He'll be more effective if you can reduce those downs. I think he's getting a little bit tired and blowed out at times. He was a guy you wanted to bring in for 20, 25 snaps a game, maybe as a rotational rusher this year. You're asking way more than that of him. He's done yeoman's work. He's done his best. But yes, I think he's being asked to do a little too much, and he'd be at that 10% I'm looking for if he couldn't. God loves you. What is up, God loves you? Hawks 5-0, Rams 4-2, Cardinals 3-2, Niners 3-3. Hawks with the game separation. 2-game separation. God loves you. Oh, yeah, you got it. So, yeah, we've got 2 games. Got a little bit of room for error here. That's a nice thing to have. It's a really nice thing to have at this point in time in the season and a rarity. I don't know if there's any other teams in this league right now. Maybe the NFC North or AFC North. Maybe the Steelers have a 2-game lead. But it's a great spot to be sitting in. It gives you a lot of leeway here, a lot of flexibility. You can rest guys an extra week longer than you thought you could, rather than if you're having to go for it every single week. Boom Shakalaka says, not a fan of only one team getting the bye. I actually kind of like a Boom Shakalaka because it truly does reward the elite teams as opposed to being the sub-elite team. You know, if I've got a team that's 14-2 and I got another team that's 12-4, but that 12-4 team's getting the same thing as that 14-2 team, basically, aside from them meeting together eventually to play when that other team gets the home field advantage, that doesn't seem like a good enough reward to a degree to me for the top team. The Hawks Nest, it's too late to be drinking coffee. No, as Boom Shakalaka says, my fellow Hawaiian guy, it's only 7:30 here. So I'm still good. I'm probably not going to sleep till late, but that's okay. I love talking with you guys, and I want to talk shop here, so I don't mind. Jason McEward, Brandon, my last name is German. It's McEdward. Sorry, like McDonald's. McEdward. Sorry, my bad. I seem to get everybody's last name wrong off the initial read, so most of the time I need you guys to tell me how to pronounce it. And then I'm just going to stay with your first name, Jason. Jerry Jones did do Dak real dirty, says Jason. Sad for Dak. Good spirit from him. Was awesome to see after I watched that play. Yeah, he's a good soldier. He's going to say the right things and do the right things. That's why you do right by him. That's why you don't short sell him. And I got to say, it looks real sketchy to me. It looks real sketchy to me when you paid Troy Aikman, when you paid Tony Romo, who didn't put up the same kind of stats that Dak put up over his first few years in his career, who didn't get the playoff win. There's nothing you can point to with Tony Romo's play and say, well, this is the reason why we had to pay him at the time, the reason we're not going to pay this guy here now. That's jacked up. That's jacked up. And I do think that they did him wrong. They had him on a cheap contract through his first 3 years. They failed to take advantage of that time by assembling an appropriate roster around him to go get that Super Bowl. That's on Jerry. That's on Dallas. That's not on him. He shouldn't pay the price for that mistake. But that's what they've asked him to do. Ante Petrish, how you doing, Ante? The MVP curse scares Brendan. I get it. It's a big thing. Now with the Madden curse, those things are legit. D-Boy says, what quarterback do you dislike the most in the NFL? What quarterback gets under your skin? Probably Aaron Rodgers. He's gotten a bit better this year, but over the last couple of years, it seems like he had gotten really insufferable. I think he sold on Mike McCarthy. I think he helped to kind of push that situation and get him out of town. I don't know how loyal he is. You hear stories like you hear Greg Jennings talk about it. It's a story I go back to where, Greg Jennings is with Aaron Rodgers and another player on Minnesota at the midfield stripe just before the game, just BSing. And at the end of the year, Greg Jennings is due to be a free agent. And Aaron tells the other guy, yeah, you should go get this guy at the end of the year. And Greg Jennings referenced the story saying, it's kind of like it hurt at the moment. Like, this is my quarterback in the middle of a really good season. I'm having a good year, telling me that they should go sign me after the year. And it's just, there's always been something like that with Aaron that's always been a little bit of a bothersome thing for me with that. Baker Mayfield would probably be the other guy because I just always thought he got way too big of a head before he had earned it. And so those would be my two guys right now. I like most of the guys, though. We've got a lot of quarterbacks that are really easy to root for in this league. Patrick Mahomes, Watson, those guys are really easy to root for. Really easy to root for. Carl Nooney, is Quandre Diggs happy? I don't see that same fire. Wondering if not having Jamal back there is affecting him. And I don't like, and he don't like to play free safety anyway. And he don't like to play free anyways. He says he prefers strong safety. Quandre to me, I don't know if I would like in the strong safety role. I don't know if he's big enough to play strong safety, personally. I think free safety is the better position for him. I think if there's a thing of frustration, he's not playing great, Carl. Part of the problem is that he's having to play a lot of the cover 2 stuff. Seattle, after they lost Jamal Adams, has gone into protectant mode with the defense. And so they've stopped blitzing as much. They've dropped more into cover 2. They've asked the corners to play more cover 3. They're really trying to protect against the deep balls first and foremost, because that was such a problem early on in the season when they had more of the dogs in the field. And they are protecting Neal a little bit here. I know he's played well, but Neal's not playing the essential same role of Jamal Adams and doing the varied things that Jamal Adams does. So they're restricting a little bit Quandre Diggs in that same respect because of that at that point. But he isn't playing as good. He's not playing as good as he played last season for us, Carl, when he first burst onto the scene, when he was great. Andre says, I personally think the Seahawks are going to be 18-0 and win another Super Bowl championship win. Well, that would be fantastic to see, Andre. If they could go 18-0 with this defense, that would be an achievement unlike few we have ever seen in NFL history. So if they could pull that off, that would be awesome to see. Tough to go 18-0. Really hard to go 18-0. But, hey, that'd be cool if they did, man. I'd love it. Y2K says, with Jamal Adams on the Jets, a lot of his blitzes were not called blitzes. On the Hawks, do you think they are called blitzes, or do that Jamal needs to play and reads the play and blitzes? How much of each? I think right now probably he had more of the 50-50 range with the Jets, freelancing, ability to blitz at any time that he saw it. I think with this team, it's probably more in the, he probably has freelance a lot less, like 20% of the time maybe to freelance. I'm sure that they want him to be a little more on assignment so that they don't have guys in an island. But he's got a lot more freelance probably than any other player on that defensive front outside of maybe Bobby. Those are the two guys that probably have a lot of ability to do what they want on the fly. Owen says, thanks for answering my questions. Owen, I love answering you guys' questions, man. This is why I do this. I get as much out of it as you guys do, I'm sure. So if not more. So I love it, man. Keep them coming. Andre, Russ is playing RN. Do you really think that he's going to win an MVP this year? I think he's the front runner, Ante. There doesn't seem to be a real solid secondary candidate there. Derrick Henry, maybe. Maybe Aaron Rodgers can still keep turning it on. But no, I think he's the front runner at this point. If he can maintain this production, this level of play, it's his to win, his to lose. Y2KH, if Chad Pennington was a rookie, what round would you draft him next year? Oh, goodness, Y2K. So I know you're asking this question, Y2K, because I just mentioned about arm strength, and Chad Pennington is one of the weaker arm strength quarterbacks coming out that we've seen in 25 years in the draft. I mean, he's a guy that had no arm strength at all. He could throw a guy open. He threw with anticipation. He threw with accuracy, but he was absolutely missing arm strength. So for me, a guy like that's going to be a 4th, 5th round guy. He's a guy that's a backup quarterback to me. He's not a guy that's going to ever be a starter for me. Solid backup if I need him in a pinch. He can win me a couple games. He can do better than 500 record, which is always my metric for a backup quarterback. But Chad Pennington was definitely a limited thrower of the football. Andre, what do we do with pass rush? What do we do with pass rush? I think the easiest, simplest move here, the quickest way to slay this beast, is you go out and get Nate Irving and you go out and get Clay Matthews. You don't have to trade for anybody at that point. It just costs you in salary cap space. Those are two very good pass rushers. Those are two guys that should be upgrades for you instantaneously. I go that route. That would be the way that I would turn on it. I don't think at that point you have to necessarily make a trade if you go get those two guys. With our secondary, I think you got to stand pat with our secondary, Entree. You just got to hope that Dunbar can play and get healthy enough to get out there and give you some quality snaps at one point or another. You're just going to have to ride with what you got. There's even less available secondary players out there right now versus pass rushers. Andre asked, do we trade Trey Flowers after the season? No, probably not. You keep him probably on the roster as your third or fourth cornerback and your backup. He's still got one more, I think, cheap year that you have as far as club control. And those cheap years, even on guys that aren't great players necessarily, keeps him probably on the team. As Y2K says, there's nothing you're going to be able to get for Trey Flowers as far as any sort of value goes. Andre the Petrich, DK Metcalf, or Tyler Lockett, you don't have to give up either. You get to have both, man. No reason you have to choose. James Glenn says, I've said for months that Case Keenum would end up taking Mayfield's job before the season's over. Hey, Case has been a very solid quarterback in this league, and if they're going to play it into that game manager role, that's a manager role that Case has shown that he can play very well. Go back to the Minnesota Vikings a couple years ago. If he's got a good team around him, he can make it happen. And right now, that Browns team has a pretty good team around that starting quarterback. But I think Mayfield's definitely getting limited. He's being kind of exposed for what he is at this league, which is not really a good starting quarterback in this league. You're going to have to protect him. You're going to have to build a running game around him. You're going to have a good defense. And one could make the argument, well, why are you making him the number one overall pick at that point? Why are you, go in a better direction if that's what you're going to have to go after? And they very well could. I mean, we could be seeing at this point Baker moved on from by the Browns after this year. JSD says, what will it take for the Jets to fire Adam Gase? Well, if you didn't see this game this week, if you're the Jets ownership, you lose 24-0, I think, to the Dolphins. They got the break speed off of them by the Dolphins. And Adam Gase is supposed to be this offensive mastermind who can't even generate a single point. This is the first team this year to get shut out. If that doesn't get you fired, then he's probably here through the whole rest of the season. Y2K says, maybe it's smart to not fire Gase. This way you lose out, then fire him. A new coach, you might win a few games. It's true, Y2K. We've seen that where guys get fired and the assistant head coach comes in there and everybody's suddenly like playing with a little bit of renewed fire and vigor for whatever reason. So maybe that is what they're doing. They're trying to kind of, keep Gase in there to lose for Lawrence. Brendan says, who does a defense guard when you have Lockett, Metcalf, Moore, Brown? Why does Lockett disappear so much? I don't think that you're able to guard him, Brendan. That's why I'm so excited by the thought process of Metcalf, Moore, Brown, or even Metcalf, Josh Gordon, Antonio Brown, and Moore. It comes to a point where, look, teams have maybe one corner on there, one good cornerback. Some teams may have two good cornerbacks. Those are the real those teams. That's a luxury. Two good cornerbacks. Very, very few teams have three cornerbacks, and there's nobody that's got four cornerbacks. So when you're coming out with a four wide receiver set with that kind of arsenal out there, it comes to a point where you're undefendable. There's nothing those teams can do to stop that at one point or another. I mean, it's not, this isn't Madden football we're talking about. It's just a fourth cornerback's on Antonio Brown out of the slot. And Lockett's in the slot on the other side. What are you going to do? And you asked them the question, why does Lockett disappear so much? When I've watched the overhead shots and they're showing it in these games, he's getting doubled a lot of times, Brendan. If you look at these plays with DK Metcalf, they're still allowing him to be singled up. They're still trying to let him be one-on-one outside, but Lockett's getting doubled. Teams are taking away that crosser over the top by keeping it one defender trailing and then having the safety up ahead of him. So it's allowing Lockett to get bracketed at that point. And when you're getting double-teamed as a wide receiver, it's hard to get open. I don't care how good of a wide receiver you are. The other guys have got to go out at that point and show up. The other guys that are on single one-on-one matchups have got to now go eat. Why does Greg Olsen and Will Disley disappear so much? Well, they like to go into a lot of mass pass protect at times as well, Brendan, as far as the tight ends go. So we've asked our tight ends a lot of times so far to do a lot of pass protecting. Keep Russ clean. Give him a lot of time in the pocket so these long developing routes can develop. Well, those guys aren't out running routes, you're not going to see him making as many catches. So I think that's probably why you've seen a little bit less action to our tight ends early on. Y2K says, I used to love Madden franchise so much. Me too, man. It puts a tear to my eye, the fact that they've gone so far downhill and they want to make it into the Madden Ultimate teams now. They don't care about the franchise mode. The franchise mode could be something so special and so awesome for Madden and help generate for them sales every year if it was back. They've lost sales by diving away from it, I'd argue. And they've lost themselves a little bit by leaving the dynasty aspect. Because I loved it because it helped train you about salary cap. It helped make you learn about how to do trades and how the bonus money would accelerate. It was almost kind of a teaching tool in ways. It's gone away from that because they don't want people to play franchise. They want people to play the ultimate teams. Andre the Petra says, what are we going to do with our upcoming draft? I would say they're probably going to try to look. I think the number one couple positions you'd look at if you're looking at second round at this point is you've got to probably take a long, hard look at the potential of what's out there at free safety, what's out there at corner, maybe what's out there at running back at that point. If you've offloaded Rashad Penny, if Chris Carson's gone through free agency, maybe you're looking at a running back at that spot. I wouldn't want to draft that low, but certainly Seattle's shown a willingness in the past to draft that high, a running back. But those would probably be the top positions that I would look at. Left tackle, certainly. Dwayne Brown could be looking at retirement. That might be the number one position you're looking at replacing. John Staff says, who will the NFL randomly severely suspend next on our team? It's getting old. Gordon, Woods, Reed cost us dearly last year. Tyreek Hill walked. Yeah, it's a little bit of a double standard, it seems like at times, John. And this one I've called the Gordon situation seems almost punitive in the way they've gone about going after him. Especially you see Antonio Brown only get 8 game suspension with all the crap he did. I don't know. I don't know why they're doing it in this situation. I wish I had a better answer for you with this because it does seem a little bit unjust. It seems really unjust, actually. But maybe it's true. Maybe Goodell really does hate Seattle. If you did have Madden, who would you have on your Madden team on offense or defense? I play franchise mode, Ante, so I don't do any fantasy draft. I'd stay with the Seahawks. I like to play out simulations like the Seahawks team and then play general manager in the offseason, how I'd build the offseason. Eventually, I'll do a video on this year of if I would have built the team this year and how I would have built them and play it out in a simulation as a quick content video this season at some point. But I sure wish they did better on it. They're just a crappy game. Carl says, how does Shaquem Griffin get on the field more? I don't know. They don't seem to want to get him on the field very much, Carl. They don't seem to like him as a pass rusher. It's one of those things, this is all I can take from this because they're just so unwilling to give him very many snaps out there. Certainly you don't want him out there rushing the passer in positions where they could be running the ball. So it has to be in passing situations specifically. And maybe this last week against the Vikings, there was too many times in situations where you couldn't predict that. You didn't know for certain that it was going to be a pass. They were certainly very committed to the running game. That probably kept Shaquem off the field for a few more snaps. But when they get the opportunities, I'd like to see him get on the football field for the reasons I mentioned earlier. He gets up in that 10% pass rush win rate when he is on the field and given those opportunities. Brendan says, since Jason told you my last name is pronounced like the sausage company, Eckrich. Okay, Brendan, Eckrich. I'm not going to be able to remember all these last names. You guys got some $10 handle last names, you know. You guys got some very nothing easy about these last names. But I will try to. I even messed up Carl's. I can't even get right, man. It's hard in the last ones. I'm just going first name from here on out. But Eckrich. Okay, gotcha. Robert Rowett, we need a Patrick Kearney or a Chris Clemens. We do, man. I mean, and just to drive down further on that, we need a Leo. We need a Leo. The whole thing with me being upset with us not signing Clowney and bailing out on that at the end of the deal on that, it's not that we didn't sign Clowney. It's that we didn't address the Leo position through the whole offseason. Yeah, Darrell Taylor will eventually be a great Leo in this league probably. A very solid player probably in this league. I look at him as like a Harold Landry type that you got with the Tennessee Titans. But he's not ready to be that yet. And you need a guy that's legitimate, ready to hit the ground running right now. And we don't have that kind of guy out there. You know, Ben Sameo is doing his best. He's doing his best. But it's not enough to me in a lot of respects. We need way more. Or just like you said, even a Kearney or Chris Clemens type. These aren't guys that are, you know, the best defensive players in the league. We just need a functional Leo defensive end. I agree, Robert. Boom Shakalaka. Pete said Shaquem earned more snaps. I don't remember him playing much. I agree, boom shakalaka. I think it was just, though, and as I think this through a little bit, I think it was just because Minnesota went to so many heavy run looks, and you don't want Shaquem on the football field with his hand in the ground. Teams are going to go right at him and attack him, and he's going to get swallowed whole in the running game. So you can't, that's his limitation to him. You have to protect him in that respect. If I was to make a guess off this last game against Minnesota, that's why he didn't see as many snaps. Brendan says Seattle honestly makes it to the big game last year if Goodell doesn't steal Gordon and Woods. I agree with you, Brendan. Those were the injuries that just went a little bit too far. That was you were right on that line. It's the same line the 49ers are on right now, where your season teeters on the balance to falling over the edge. And then it's a free fall. And it was Mike Iupati injury happened, and it was like, and then just the Gordon and the Al Woods suspension was enough to kick it to the other side. Just brutal. D-Boy, how do you feel about when people like and support more than one team? My dad supports and likes Dallas and Denver. I don't like it, and I make fun of him all the time for having two teams. I don't hate on it, I guess, D-Boy, but I probably align with you on this as far as it's hard for me to understand. I don't have a number 2 team, and I don't even have a number 2 team that's close. So I'm with you on it. I don't know. It's a little silly to me. But some of those people come from different places in the country, and they got their stories to fit why they are that way. Andre Petri says, should have more pass rush or more in the secondary. We should have more pass rush, Andre. I think more pass rush would help our secondary. Some of the issues of our secondary, some of the reasons that they've been attacked as much as they have been, have become because of those long developing routes deep down the football field. If you get the pass rush quicker there, that pass rush win rate, you win in 2.5 seconds more often. That shortens the play, shortens the quarterback's clock. Those guys on the outside are going to look so much more better. D-Boy says, do you think Russ is lying when he says that he cares more about rings than MVP votes? No, I don't. Because I think at the end of the day, MVPs don't really determine your ultimate greatness as a quarterback. How many MVPs does Peyton Manning have stacked up? Does anybody believe that Peyton Manning's a better quarterback than Tom Brady? No. Because at the end of the day, rings will determine that. You got NBA basketball. There's a lot of people out there, especially the young heads, they love themselves LeBron James. But the other people go, yeah. This other guy over here, LeBron's got his MVP awards and been to his championship. This guy's got the 6 rings. And he didn't lose any of them when he got there. So it's, I think Russ understands what he's talking about with that. D-Nugget, what is up? Brandon, you are the best. This view is too small. Oh, you need more of me on the screen? You need more of this face? You want to see more of this on the screen, bigger? You guys don't need to see that. We're just trying some new things out here, D-Nugget. We might go a little bit bigger. As James says, Lombardi over the MVP every time. I'm with you, James. Russell could never get another MVP or any MVP and would stack up 4 or 5 Lombardi trophies, and he'll be considered one of the number 1, 2, or 3 all-time quarterbacks that ever played this game. Undoubtedly. So, Jeff Ryan says, I agree that Diggs hasn't been as good of a season as he did last year, but it's still early. I feel he got screwed on some of the flags thrown at him. He'll get back in his zone once Adams is back. Yeah, I think he'll look a much better player. He'll look a much better player once he gets Jamal Adams back, and they don't have to play the cover 2 shell stuff all the time. So it's going to help him improve. He's not a cover 2 free safety. He's more of a single high guy, and they can't play him in the single high look as much as they want because they got Neal out there and there's no Marquise player. When you're down to your 4th safety, I know how good Neal's playing, but they are protecting him within the scheme and what they're asking him to do. Y2K says, I did love Pennington versus Brady. I always rooted for Pennington, but his 25-yard throws were like his deep throws floating in the air, but he could move the sticks. He could throw with anticipation, and that's what you got to do, Y2K. If you have a soft arm, you've got to be able to see that guy's back and not even out of his break and throw that ball well before it. You've got to anticipate it. The problem is it's sometimes hard to always anticipate those guys being that open and having to throw the ball that early because defenders are fast and they can jump those routes. And he probably had the softest arm of any modern-day NFL quarterback in the last 25 years, Pennington. I think it's maybe Tebow was a little bit weaker, but they're both neck and neck. Sign the Mountain from Game of Thrones. Just throw him at the defensive end or defensive tackle and see what happens. Well, yeah, he's 6'8"? Yeah, you know you're not going to move him. You know you're not going to move him, Y2K. I think he had a stroke or something. Andre the Petrovich, when will this... oh, look at that. We got a super chat. Look, guys, my super chat worked. See how it shows up on the deal? D-Nugget with the $1.99 thing. My thing worked, guys. That's awesome. That looks cool. See, you guys, some little bells and whistles. Thank you for the $1.99 donation. It's not all bad there, D-Nugget. When will the Seahawks see fans at the stadium this year or at all? Asked Entree. I think we'll get them in as long as we don't get... Right now we're in that key moment here where things are starting to open back up nationwide. And so are we going to see the second, third, fourth resurgence of this situation that's been plaguing everything come back into the fray? If we do, you don't see any fans. If things continue to taper off a bit and they get more of a control over it, I think we see some fans in the stadium before the end of the year. I don't think we'll ever see it filled up all the way to capacity. But if we can just get it by the playoff time, that's perfectly fine. They can have an effect on the football game. Andre says, do you think the Tyler lockstep for Doug Baldwin, do you think lockstep up for me mean Doug Baldwin? Can you re-ask that question, Andre? I don't know what you mean on the Tyler Lockett Baldwin question. Master Chief says, why don't we use our tight ends at all? Not sure why we haven't maybe used them more often, Master Chief. There's been times where we've really fallen in love with throwing to the outsides and our receivers. And specifically, they'll go into these max pass protect where you're in 11 personnel with 2 tight ends. And then they'll run play action and they'll have both of the tight ends just sit in and block and max protect. This has given Russ a lot more time to throw the football, but at times you have not enough receivers out running routes, and so nobody breaks open because you have multiple guys being double teamed on a given play. I would like to see maybe a little bit more of an influence of the tight ends, especially on some of the shorter routes, giving Russell some early, easy completions to allow him to get into rhythm. Sometimes they ask Russell right out of the gate to just start hitting these hole shots and money balls down the field every time, and sometimes your quarterback just needs to get in a little bit of a little lather with the sweat, a couple easy throws in the flat, a little play action off the set, and then open that stuff up a bit. But I share your frustration, Master Chief. It's been a little bit tough. Andre the Petra says, do you think DK will be a Hall of Famer in the NFL? Yep, I'm predicting it now for the last year or so, Andre. You look at his trajectory. He's having, at the start of his career, I think he's through the first 21 games of his career. He's had better production than Julio Jones through his first 21 games, through Calvin Johnson through his first 21 games, and he's right there with Randy Moss, who had the best opening of any NFL receiver in league history. I mean, he was blowing the top off the statistical categories out the gate. DK is right there with him through the first 21 games. So yeah, he's in rarefied air here with what he's doing. D-Boy says, Falcons got the first win of the season. Was it luck or was it because of the head coach is gone? No, it's actually, this is a weird, and I don't have an explanation for this, but if you guys want to watch this as a general rule of thumb, there's this weird trend in the NFL, and somebody was speaking to this about just a second ago about why Adam Gase is yet to be fired. But there's an odd trend, and it's gone back for years in the NFL. You've got a coach in who's playing, he's on the hot seat, he's losing week after week after week, then he gets ejected, fired. Mid-year, end of the season even. You're 0-9, you're 0-12. Then here comes the assistant head coach, and the very next week, more often than not, that team will then win. It's the weirdest thing in the world. I don't have an explanation for it. Maybe that the players feel even more on edge, like they've got to really go for it because they know the eyeballs are really on them at that point. They're really being judged, and they know no job's safe. I don't have a good explanation for it, but you see it happen very, very often. Y2K says we need to keep the West Coast offense going. Screens, out routes, slants, passes to the running backs, etc. It's been super beneficial. It is, and it keeps the defense honest, Y2K, because what happens in these plays when you're going to these deep shots is part of the problem is the defenses drop the deep zones. They leave everything open up underneath, but because you're not running any short routes, there's nobody to throw to. Because there's nobody you've run as just a short route as just a nice drop-off pass. I really wish they would, in the first 5 games of the thing, that's one thing that's jumped out. I'd have few real issues or problems with their offense. But if I was to point to a couple things that have kind of just grinded my gears a little bit, it's the fact that we aren't really leaning as much as we should on that short passing game, especially as good as Russell is doing with it. He's been very good in the short passing game so far. Boom Shakalaka says, I listened to Brock and Salk. Please explain why Baldwin hated Russ so much. I don't understand the beef. They mention it every podcast. there's a weird thing with Doug Baldwin not liking Russ. And I'm not a guy going out on a limb here saying it. They're very well aware of it there because they've got probably some insider info on it. He was a guy that just, I don't know if he just, there was a contingent of the Seahawks when Russ got in there that just never embraced him. The Richard Shermans, the Doug Baldwins, I think even to a degree Michael Bennett's, there were guys that did, but there are guys that just didn't seem to fully be on board with it. And look at Richard Sherman. He'll praise every quarterback in the world, but will never throw any praise at Russell Wilson. I mean, he'll talk about Jimmy Garoppolo being this and Jimmy Garoppolo being that, or this quarterback being that. And it's like he's almost willfully just edging out Russell for whatever reason. And those guys just, I don't know what the problems is with them. I don't know where their issue come into play. I don't know if it's that Russell's not black enough thing that you've heard at times, as far as the reasoning being with that. I don't think it's that anymore. They've got their reasons, man. They got their reasons for it, though. But it's a silly beef, Boom Shakalaka. They should never have been this way. These guys won a Super Bowl. They should all be. I don't get it. D Nugget says, I want flashback and Dorsett. Well, they're both slated, I think, at some point to come back, D Nugget. So I think it's going to happen here at some point. When? Your guess is as good as mine on both of those guys. Does Russ have any Brady in him in terms of changing receivers' routes and moving them around? I feel I've never seen it. It's not as reliant on his game to have to do that, Y2K. I think that they do run option routes. I think that there's times where you'll see Tyler Lockett run his patented crosser, that thing that gets him 20 yards at will sometimes down the field. He'll sometimes stop the crosser mid-go if he feels the safety or the cornerback playing into the cross route, and he'll sit down in the zone. Some of that is them feeling that on the fly a little bit. There is a little bit of that going on, but luckily when you have a mobile quarterback, they build it more to the secondary routes after the first route breaks off. If it is open, then break to your second route. When they know they've got that in their back pocket, that's not something Brady's got as part of his game. So it's by necessity Brady has to do that. It's by a lack of necessity why the Seahawks don't necessarily do that as much. Boom Chakalaka, you know what other commissioner hated Seattle? Sonics. I'd agree with it, man. Leaving the Sonics go, letting them being taken out of Seattle was one of the cold-blooded moves that the commissioner's office let them do in the NBA. They let them take them for no fight at all. Just here you go. They had no interest at all in seemingly making it work in Seattle, and they've still not brought a team back to the local area, which I've been really surprised by. There's some teams that should not have basketball teams in this league that do. I must disagree. You got to do fantasy draft in franchise mode. I love drafting guys and watching them grow. I'm too much of a truist and purist with the Y2K, so I like to be able to take the Seahawks roster and, okay, we've played through this season. Now what moves can I make to improve this? How can I build this team up? I love the roster building aspect as it's true to life as opposed to the dream scenario. So I know why you like it, but I can't get on board with it. MWeb says, if we actually sign Antonio Brown, it's chip time. I agree. And again, this is one of the things I've argued with. It's low cost. He's not going to cost more than $1 million or $2 million for the rest of the year. You can cut him at any time if he goes crazy town on you. And he's going to give you a guy who's going to toe the line, I think. And he's an upgrade. All those things as far as what he's going to give you on the football field. So to me, it's a no-brainer. Y2K says, honestly, we just need J.J. Watt. J.J. also adds some leadership or clutch. I know not your favorite terms. I'm okay with it here. I think he could do that. I think there is a clutch element to pass rushers because pass rushers, especially the smart, old, cagey ones, can set up an offensive lineman through the game so that he can have a play when he needs it. He can have an offensive lineman leaning in one direction at just the right time to go and get that sack when you absolutely positively need it. It's those older guys that have been around the league for years that have got that skill. Not all of them have it. But he is one of those guys that does have that, and that's part of what I would offer. Could make him a little bit more of a clutch-type pass rusher, like you mentioned. Boom Shakalaka asks, what would it take to get Watt? I don't think it's going to take more than a fourth-round pick at this point, Boom Shakalaka, especially if the Texans are trying to do Watt a solid here by trading him to a Super Bowl contender, understanding this is going to be his last year, and he's going to retire after the season. Yeah, maybe a 4th and 7th rounder. I'd be willing to do that too. Y2K says Peyton Manning also kind of lucked out for both of his 2 Super Bowls. Yeah, he's got vastly times. Certainly fell off from what his regular season play was, and why you shouldn't get caught in MVPs. Because he was the quintessential quarterback that would show out during the season, but then come playoff time, and it would sometimes shrink. You know, he was sometimes not always. We mentioned the word clutch. It sometimes wasn't always there in the playoffs. And thank you for that donation, D Nugget. I do appreciate it. And thank you, D-Boy, for mentioning, if you are liking this current live stream show and you haven't already, please hit that like button. It helps me get shown out on all the algorithms. And if you're not subscribed, please do subscribe. This thing is helping us grow. We're on the road to 5,000 subscribers, and we're going strong. So let's keep that momentum going, please. Boom Shakalaka says, T-Boy threw the ball like a turd. He did. He really struggled to get that football around. You have guys that have that effortless type motion. He was not a guy with effortless motion. It seemed like every part of the motion, he was cranking it up to get that ball out of his hand. Do you think that Tyler Lockett has stepped up for Doug Baldwin in the past few years? Yeah, I honestly kind of think Tyler Lockett's been a little bit of what he's been since he's walked in the league. I think that he hit his top end really quick, and that's what his top end is. People mention about him sometimes disappearing or sometimes not appearing as the number 1 receiver. Maybe some people would like him to be. I just don't think he's that. Probably one of the best number 2 wide receivers in the NFL, if not the best number 2 wide receiver in the NFL. And that's perfectly fine. That's perfectly good. But yeah, he's absolutely filled Doug Baldwin's shoes. But I don't know if he's elevated his game as much as just kept his game at the same kind of high level. Entree says, do you think the Seahawks will hire coaches Dan Quinn and Chris Peterson? I get the impression that Chris Peterson's pretty ready to stay retired at this point. I'd love to bring him on. He'd be an asset to us as far as a head coach. That guy knows how to coach a football team. Dan Quinn, hard to say. Hard to say. I mean, certainly if Norton is moved and shipped out, Dan Quinn would be the first guy that I would expect Pete Carroll to have up on a dial and say, come on in. But do I see that happening with any kind of certainty? Not necessarily, because I think Quinn's going to have some options. So maybe candidates, but not exact. In the future, sorry, that's what you're asking, in the future for Lockett. No, I think Lockett is kind of what he is, Entree. I don't think he's going to get another step above where he elevates in his game. Very good, but I think he is where he is. Oh, look at that. Boom Shakalaka with his first donation ever. Boom Shakalaka, you get the double salute for the first donation ever. We've had so many kind guys giving donations today. $5 donation. I thank you so much, Boom Shakalaka. You are the man. I appreciate you. And at some point or another, we're going to cross paths here in Hawaii, my guy. I appreciate it, though. Carl says the Super Bowl INT, sometimes Russ would only be on the field for a quarter of the game, and I remember that pissing them off. The SB. You might have to retype that, Carl. I don't know what you mean on that one. Debo's dad, how do you feel about the Cowboys' new head coach? Is he doing his job right, or should we just have kept Jason Garrett? Here's our problem, Debo's dad, and I don't think I'm probably going on a limb here saying this about your owner. The problem is not the head coaching hire. It's not a good head coaching hire. It's just not. McCarthy was not a good head coaching hire. It was a lateral head coaching hire. There's no difference between Garrett and really him at the end of the day. Or maybe there's even the potential that Garrett's a marginally better head coach than he may be. Either way, both of them, I think, are below average head coaches in this league. Here's where the issue comes, Debo's dad. Jerry Jones. Jerry Jones has been the problem. You guys had one of the best all-time coaches there in Jimmy Johnson. He forced him out because his ego said, I could have had any number of 10 head coaches in here and could have gotten the same Super Bowl titles, could have gotten the same kind of production on the football field. And that pissed off Mr. Jimmy Johnson, and he said, well, go F yourself, I'm out of here. And since that point, Jerry Jones has really not been able to bring in a head coach with great quality. He's had to kind of take the also-rans because he's running it as sort of the new age Al Davis. You know, the owner should never be the general manager. And his son's the general manager right now. He's kind of part the general manager. Owners should not be general managers. And that's going to make it hard to bring on coaches when you have an owner doing that. They're not qualified to do it. They shouldn't be doing it. And Jones has shown time and time again, and this Dak Prescott deal is just the latest indicator that he should not be running with that kind of control. He certainly can have a place. He can have a voice. But running the personnel decision-making is causing problems and it's making it hard to bring on a really good head coach. Could you have maybe gotten a Lincoln Riley in there instead of a Mike McCarthy if you didn't have an owner with so much of a hands-on approach to what he was trying to do? Maybe. I kind of think so. I personally says, I personally think Dan Quoch and Chris Prieston both would be great coaches for us. The Seattle Seahawks, after Coach Pete Carroll wants to retire. I'd be good with Peterson. I don't know as much about Quinn if I'm as sold on him as a head coach. There's a part of me that thinks maybe with Dan Quinn, his best role is as a defensive coordinator. It's just some of those coaches out there that are at their best as a defensive coordinator and really shouldn't be head coaches. I think he's maybe one of those guys. James Glenn says, I was hoping to see us use a Bouger like we used George Fant last year as an extra offensive lineman. That worked well for us. They've done it a little bit, James, but not as much as they did with Fant last year. I think it kind of shows James some of the special skill set Fant had, being a, I think, former college tight end, why he worked in that role so well. I also think it's partly because they like their tight end position a little bit better this year, James, where they like Hollister as their third tight end versus what they had last year when they got decimated at that position. Y2K says we probably get some kind of defensive end for a fourth rounder or a second by the trade deadline. We'll see who it is, though. It's hard to say who it's going to be at this point, but I do see there being some kind of move they make, Y2K. I don't think that we just sit where we're at right here and just hold position. I really don't. Boom Shakalaka says, this and the Seahawkers from Montana are my favorite shows. I appreciate that, Boom Shakalaka. Thank you so much. D-Nugget, we are like the retirement home for the NFL. Olsen, Watt, I don't mind it, man. If it's to get them a ring, it's to get those old NFL greats a ring on their way out the door, happy to do it. Happy to do it. And Olsen shows he's got a little bit of gas left in the tank. He's been a very good blocker for us. He's been solid enough as a pass catcher. Perfectly happy with, if we can get kind of the similar kind of production out of Watt that we get out of Olsen right now in a trade, I'm okay with that. I got a place for that on my team. Y2K says he likes Tyler Lockett better than Doug Baldwin. Maybe when their careers are done, Tyler has more yards, more touchdowns, more effective as a receiver. It's possible. It's absolutely possible. You would think with a good fan base like Seattle, we would have had a basketball team already. I would have. The whole situation with them moving didn't make any sense at any point in time. We had just renovated Key Arena, and then the new owner coming in after Howard Schultz flipped the team off, wanted a new stadium. He didn't really want a new stadium. He wanted to move us to Oklahoma City. Everybody knew it. Schultz knew it when he was selling the team to him. The owner knew it was buying the team. The commissioner's office in the NBA knew as well. That was what was going to go on and what was going to happen. None of the parties cared. All the parties still went through with it. It was a cold-blooded situation in the way they took our team, and it's not the only one, D-Boy. They tried to take the Mariners and put them in St. Petersburg, Florida. They tried to take our Seahawks, Ken Behring, and take them down to L.A. You know, they try to move our teams out, and we've lost previous franchises before. We lost the Seattle Pilots to Milwaukee. You know, they've taken stuff from us before. It's not the first time. It's really hard as a fan. It's made it hard for me to maintain as much attentiveness to the NBA and care as much about the NBA since they did that. It really did. I thought it was kind of a raw deal. Where's Gus Bradley at? Gus Bradley is the defensive coordinator for the San Diego Chargers. San Diego Superchargers. D-Nugget, Jerry Jones is crazy like Al Davis. He is. It went off the rails with Jerry Jones the second that he got rid of Jimmy Johnson. He had a nice combination. They had a nice framework in place they could have had one of the best dynasties of all time that would be in competition with the Patriots right now. They probably would have won another 2 or 3 Super Bowls. But ego is a hell of a drug. And pride goeth before the fall, as the Bible says, and it went with Jerry, unfortunately. I'm just saying that if I bought an NFL team, I would just make myself the GM or at least a GM, co-GM. I think that it's not to say, Y2K, that you, as an owner, can't come in and have some say on the decision-making, some kind of input in certain points, but I think you got to sprinkle it in there. You can't be there on every single decision. And certainly if you're not qualified. If you have more qualified guys to do it, if this is what they love to do and live to do, and you've been a guy that have made your money through real estate dealings, maybe maybe just stay out of it. Maybe you let the guys that are the experts do it. Is there a player, asked Debo, right now that has great footwork and great route running like Doug Baldwin? In my eyes, he was one of the best at it. Wasn't super fast or super quick, but great feet. There'd be three guys that I would probably point to in particular, Debo, off the top of my head. The first guy is going to be Keenan Allen with the San Diego Chargers, a guy that came out of Cal a couple years ago. Dropped a little bit in the draft because people questioned whether he'd have the speed to do it. He's had an ACL tear or two, yet he gets by on just fantastic route running, absolutely phenomenal footwork. The other guy is going to be DeAndre Hopkins, another guy with not a lot of speed coming out of college, but the reason he was a first-round pick, obviously great hands, but a phenomenal route runner, absolutely good as a route runner. And then the other guy's the new up-and-coming one. This is going to be Jerry Jeudy. He's a guy that I've got questions about how good or effective he's really going to be as an outside guy down the road. But as a guy with footwork, route running, and ability just right out the chute to go, he's right there with it. Those would be the three guys that would come off the top of my head that I could say had the same kind of footwork that Baldwin kind of does. Y2KH with the $6.66 donation. Thank you so much, Y2K. You guys are being super uber kind today with the donations, man. You're blowing me away. Blowing me with the donations. Y2K, I promise you I will watch film on all the guys mentioned. I think you're meaning Justin Jefferson, right? Or is it a different Jay Jefferson that you're talking about, Y2K? But I will, I'm mentally noting the Cole, Fulham, Patrick. I'm lodging that up in my head. I'm going to go take a look at them, I promise. Shervin, Seahawks fans were watching that Packers and Rodgers performance with pure joy. I'm sure you were too. Ha, ha, ha. Oh, I was loving it. I was loving it. Because I know the Packers are our greatest threat. The more games that they can lose, the better I'm going to feel. If I'm playing a game tomorrow and I got to play in Seattle at home, and I got my choice between the New Orleans Saints, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, or the Green Bay Packers, I do not want to take the Packers out of those three teams the least amount. So I'm perfectly happy watching them lose more games as we go forward. Sadly, I don't think they're going to lose a lot more games because I think they have a really weak schedule, almost as weak as ours as we go forward, if not even more weak. So their lane is wide open to go get that first round bye too if we fall and we lose a couple games in a row. A small room for error here still. Boom Chakalaka says, I think you skipped it, but what's the beef Baldwin has with Russ? What's the real story? There's not any one thing that causes it, Boom Chakalaka. It's a lot of conjecture on my part about what the problem is. It's the same issue that Michael Bennett and Richard Sherman had. We've heard different rumors on this. There was the thing for a long time that Russell wasn't black enough, that he was too much of a nerd, that he's too much of a company man. These kind of things would come up. That he didn't have enough of a little edge, that he was trying to be too much of a politician. The issue that I have with those guys having that issue with him, obviously the black enough stuff is ridiculous. That shouldn't even be a thing brought up in this modern age. It's just dumb. But the whole thing with him being a politician or being a yes man or being a company man, hey, welcome to the NFL, guys. Welcome to every other quarterback on every other NFL team throughout the recent history of the NFL. They are specialized. There's a reason they're paid $35 million, and then everybody else is in the $20 million range. There's a reason Kirk Cousins is making more than Aaron Donald right now, by a wide amount. And you can be mad about it, you can cry about it, you can piss and moan about it, or you can deal with the reality of it. And that's the thing with that whole beef that really jumped out to me with the Boom Shakalaka, is it was guys who weren't dealing with the reality of it, but dealing with what they wanted it to be. The LOB wanted its credit, and this young up-and-coming quarterback's getting some of the credit. And then Baldwin thinks that he's not taking enough, hits, or he's being not held to the same standard as everybody else. Ridiculous stuff like that. I just don't think that they had a leg to stand on with that at all. D-Nugget, Paul Allen was awesome, plus a hometown guy. And boy, did we ever need Paul Allen. We needed Paul Allen just like we needed Nintendo to come in and buy the Mariners. The Mariners would have been swooped up to St. Petersburg, and he did that and more. Thank God for Paul Allen. I hope Jody Allen's got a long-term plan to make sure that this team is in safe hands as we go forward for years to come. There's been rumors that Bezos wants to buy the team. Whoever buys the team, just get it in the hands where we know it's going to be there for years to come, and there's no chance anyone will ever try to steal them away from us. We've earned the right for this team to remain with us for all time now. We've proven our fanship. We've been loyal. Don't take any more of our teams. Damn it. Shervin says Jerry Jeudy is cold at his route running. It's beautiful to watch. He's an absolute master at it at a very young age. And I think he'll still be a very effective receiver, if not a Pro Bowl level receiver, for years to come. The only question with him is it going to be specifically just out of the slot? And I don't think I'm the only guy making this question, because if you look at the Broncos and what they were trying to build with that receiving core, ideally, they had Cortland Sutton, who's already an outside guy. They drafted the kid out of Penn State, who was a really good receiver in this last draft, I think in the second or third round. He's also purely kind of an outside guy. I think they understood that they were going to put Jeudy in that slot, but he can still be phenomenal in the slot. The game is moving to more 3 wide receiver sets. It's no like detriment to say that a receiver is simply a slot guy in this league. Devontae Adams is another guy, Shervins. Yeah, that's a guy left off that I probably shouldn't have left off. He's another guy that's an absolute fantastic route runner. He's less with the footwork, and he's more of a body control guy. He's a guy who seems like he's more adept at being able to get that lean going one way and get a guy to lean and then snap that lean back in the other direction. Where the other guys I mentioned are more, they got that patter of the footwork thing going, where they get the extra couple of steps in place to throw the cornerback off with his footwork. But still a very good... a great example as well. Daniel W. says the Howard Schultz thing makes no sense. If he had held the team for a few more years, he would have made even more money. He could have just had someone else manage it. He was already wealthy. I can't argue with any of your points there, Daniel. It's the part that pisses me most off about a situation. This wasn't a guy who was just barely rich or had no upside for him continuing to be rich like his company was going in the crapper, right? He was going to have money coming out the anus for years to come. He shouldn't have bought the basketball team to try to be making a profit off of it if that was the problem and he was losing some money off of it. And as you said, eventually these owners, it doesn't matter whether it's baseball, basketball, or football. I buy a football team in 1975. I'm buying that football team for what? 20 million? 10 million? Now I sell that football team right now. What's it worth? $1 billion? For a 35, 40-year span, that's a pretty damn good return on your investment. If you're needing to also make a profit year in and year out in between that time, you lose any understanding from my standpoint as a fan. I don't get what you're trying to do, other than you're just a money-hungry bastard who doesn't care about sports, which maybe that's just what Schultz is at the end of the day. Devontae Adams runs like a 4.6. Yep, but he's a fantastic route runner, excellent hands, all that. Daniel Pollock says, are we convinced this team is that much better than last year? Not a lot of quality wins in the first 5 games. Well, here's my counter to you on that, Daniel. My first answer to your question is yes. This team is vastly improved off of what it was last year. The caveat I would add to that, though, Daniel, is that last year by this point, your health started to suffer, kept getting worse, and you were so beat up by the end of the year that the team at the end of the year looked nothing like the opening roster at the start of the year. And that was a big reason why you fell off at the end of the year. And so it's as much to say, we are a little bit better this year, but we were still a very talented team last year. We're just not going to suffer from the downfalls, I think, that we suffered last year, where we had more injuries on starters than anybody else in the NFL. I don't think that that's going to replicate this year with us. It doesn't tend to replicate with the same team in back-to-back years. It tends to be a fluky stat that hits one team here and hits another team there. So I don't think that you're going to run into the same situation. But yeah, Greg Olsen is a better number 2 tight end than what you had. Or if you put Uncle Will as a number 2, that's better. Your running back is as deeper and stronger than it was last year. You look at the linebacking core, I think is still going to be better once Jordan Brooks comes along. I think your secondary is still better than what it was last year. So overall, and again, special teams is playing out of its mind. Let's not short sell the special teams as well, Jeff, in that they're also a team that's, they're also a side of this team that's kicking butt. We got maybe the best special teams unit in the entire NFL. So we can't sell that short either. But those combinations all come together to make us at least a little bit better than what we were last year. Jeff says, losing the Sonics sucked. I used to love going to the games and getting to meet and play in the summertime with Kemp, Nate, Mac, GP, and Det. Wow, that was awesome if you got a chance to do that, man. That's awesome. That would have been so much fun. But those teams I loved rooting for those teams growing up. And when Carl came in here and he had such a wild team, they loved to play defense, get their hands in passing lanes, run the break. You got Kemp and Sean Kemp running with the alley-oops. I mean, it was amazing watching those guys all work together. You had a deep team, Sam Perkins in there too. That was a fun team to watch, man. Really fun team to watch. You tuned in for every one of those games. YQK, Justin Jefferson. I'll watch a little more of Justin Jefferson. I watched a little bit of him so far. He's impressed me really well. I think he can play a little more outside than I originally thought at draft time last year, but I still do. I'll watch a little bit more of him. I got those other guys too in my head here. $5 donation from Barry Sotoro. Thank you for the $5 donation, Barry. Man, I appreciate it. Thank you so much. Number one trade ideas from me, Barry, as we stand right now. I'm looking at the Texans with 3 potential opportunities for us. Whitney Merciless would be a good Leo end for you. Jacob Martin, who we know he can play here, has played pretty well. Probably not a guy that's going to get you 10 sacks a year, but he at least can get you a little bit better pass rush win rate than maybe you're getting right now. And then the third guy with the Texans I'd look at would be J.J. Watt. Add a new addition of this, that Watt might be a dream scenario. Other guys you could look at, maybe Ryan Kerrigan from the Redskins, Tarquise McKinley from the Atlanta Falcons. I don't know if we have a lot of other options available out there as far as trade goes at this point, Barry. It's really light. It's really light. I'd prefer, actually, at this point, we sign Nate Irving and Clay Matthews in free agency and don't give up any draft capital. But I would expect us to do something. Something. Thank you for that donation, though, Barry. I really appreciate it. Daniel says, the Howard Schultz thing just shows how these billionaires, one, can never have enough money, and number two, will sell out anyone so they can profit themselves. The world is ran by psychopaths, man. No disagreement from me, Daniel. I'm a conspiratorialist, so I will totally tell you that we are run by psychopaths. Yeah, I agree. I don't understand how he could do that. Howard's a guy that's from Seattle, a guy you'd think would have some kind of understanding of loyalty. He knew darn well what he was doing when he did it, and I hope he's shunned here forever for it. I hope it destroys any of his political aspirations. I don't have any respect for the guy at this point for what he did. No respect. D-Boy says, how do you feel about rookie Chase Claypool? I think he's playing even better than I thought, but I did have high hopes for Chase Claypool, D-Boy. If we go back to the draft evaluation for him, he fit into a realm of a couple of receivers. There was about 3 or 4 of them in this draft that were guys that were very good contested catchers. They could go up with a guy hanging off of them, go up and make the play in downfield deep. He was one of those guys. The Pittman kid out of USC was another one of those guys. There was all sorts of different types of receivers in this draft. You had your pure route runners like your Jerry Jeudy or CeeDee Lamb. You had your freakish sort of Steve Smith types with a Jalen Reagor out of TCU. Just a wide kind of variance of wide receivers in this draft. But you had also a couple of these contested catch guys that I really liked as well, and Claypool fits right in that. I'm not surprised to see him doing really well. He fits in really well with Ben Roethlisberger's skill set, and boy, the kid's got some upside, doesn't he? He seems to have some big time upside. Carl says, Hari, hella high. If you touched on them, Steelers are killing it. Could you imagine a 2005 rematch? Oh, could you imagine a rematch, Carl, and then the officials give him the game again? Please, no, God. No, God, no, God. But it'd be an interesting Super Bowl, man, and they're 5-0. They've got a good defense. They can run the ball just good enough, and they've got some pass catchers to make it work. So they could be in there dancing. The AFC is going to be it's going to be tough to get through there to the Super Bowl this year, even for those guys that have been running lead dog like Kansas City or Baltimore. Much tougher than any year it's been over the last probably 10 years out of the AFC. Andre says, I wish we brought back Michael Bennett for one more year in Seattle. I do too, Andre. It's the thing, though, I would tell Michael Bennett's thing. I would have told Earl Thomas the thing I would have told Richard Sherman. Don't burn your bridges on the way out of town. You might want to be going back there at some day. And those guys, unfortunately, kind of burn their bridges. And it's sad to see because you could definitely use them maybe to a degree. But that's what happened. They burned their bridges. Just as D Nugget says, if Sherman and Earl didn't have the attitude issues, they'd still be here today. It's a problem, man. It's a problem for why those guys got to where they got. And somebody asked about why was there 8 from Baldwin to Russell Wilson? What was the problem between those guys? I don't know. I don't know what all the attitude came from. You know, those guys all had a little bit of an edginess. They played with that fire. They played on that line. Maybe in playing on that line is also what caused them to kind of think the way they did in regards to Russ. Detlef Shrimp was a really nice guy. 6th man of the year at least once or twice, says Jeff. Yep. Really complete player. Long, 6'8", 6'9", 6'10". Could hit the 3-point shot. Could handle the ball a little bit. You could get him in the post. He could do some shots. He was tricky down there. Kind of a poor man's Dirk Nowitzki. Shervin says that today we saw what happens when Rodgers is under pressure in the pocket. He plays terrible, just like against San Francisco and LAC last year. Yeah, he does not have his same young Aaron Rodgers mobility that he had. He has lost a little bit of mobility over the years and getting into being 37 years old. He doesn't move with the same fleet of foot. We'll eventually see Russell get there too as well. It happens to everybody. But the thing that he's been able to benefit coming into this game was that he was the quarterback under the least amount of pressure in the entire NFL coming into this particular game this week. Then loses David Bakhtiari. Tampa Bay can get after the quarterback. Suddenly then you see him get a little bit rushed, and I think he is a different quarterback when you can get pressure on him. Absolutely is. We saw last year, part of the reason in the playoff game, we lost that game. They had that really great first half against us because he was super comfortable in that first half. We couldn't generate any pass rush. So it would be great if we could get the pass rush coming along, and if they can continue. I mean, I don't know what Bakhtari's situation is, but if he's out for a good amount of time, that's going to really hurt the Packers' situation. And yeah, Russell's been dealing with pressure for years. He's figured it out. Part of the reason that Russell's playing so much better this year is for the first time in a long time, he's not running for his life playing a play out. Now it seems like he's got all the time in the world, and he's going to be that much more successful because of it. Barry says, well, they can take the Seattle rain for all I care. I feel you on that one. It's good they've won some championships, but I don't think I've not watched one Seattle. Yeah, I don't know. Don't take any more of our teams. Shervin says, do you think Lamb and Jefferson can be effective outside the slot, or that's where their future lies? Don't know. I would have said at draft time, Shervins, I would have told you that Lamb had some potential in the outside because he's a good contested catcher. Jefferson was so used so much out of the slot that I just thought he would be a specialized guy in that role. I think he'll mainly play out of there for the most part, but I think that both do have an ability to do a little bit more on the outside than I maybe initially gave them credit for having in their game. I think they're a little bit more well-rounded than I thought. Shervin's asked also, how do you feel about Shaquille Griffin so far? I think Shaquille Griffin has been a mixed bag this season. There's been games where he's not played very good. There's been other games where he's played a little bit better. There's games he's not playing to making a play on the ball, not jumping on a route, not putting his foot in the ground and driving on the ball. Then we have other games where he makes a play on the ball and gets an interception. It's very hard to evaluate Shaquille Griffin at this point. The problem I come down and I have with him is that he's a guy that wants between $10 and $15 million a season is what he's going to want to be paid. I don't know if I'm in the place where I can put that on the books at this point. I don't know if I want 1/10 of my cap going to Shaquille Griffin. That's a little bit too tough of a pill for me to swallow. I think I'd be out on that at this point with his current level of play. There's still time and room for him to improve if he can come along. My opinion on this one can be changed, but I think it's a very fluid situation with Shaquille, and he has yet to really win me over. Y2K says, I'm kind of changing my mind on Homer. We ought not to give him gym runs, but these obvious passing downs, he's been amazing in pass pro and can block okay. He has been really good in pass pro, and he's selling out for it. He's going all in on putting his body on the line in those situations. Doesn't matter if he's going to get thrown around by the defender. He's going all in. It's great to see. We haven't had that in a while. Chris Carson's never been really good in pass protection, nor has any other third down back we've had, and they've been very good. But he's been solid in it. I don't like to see him getting a lot of carries. I can't wait till Carlos Hyde gets back and takes away maybe a few of those carries he's getting Y2K, but he's been all right. He's been, he's been okay. He's been solid. Shervin says, Rams and 49ers look mediocre tonight. Yeah, I think that both were just a little bit off tonight. I think the 49ers had a little bit more they were playing for. They're still a little light right now as far as their talent goes because of the injury situation that they're dealing with. But I still think the Rams are going to be a lot better than what they showed tonight. I don't think that this is the Rams team of what we're going to see even when we have to play them in a couple weeks. So it's encouraging to see. I'll agree with you there, Shervins, but I still think that the Rams in particular are still one of our main threats in the entire NFC, not just in our own division. Just trust to take the short throw if the long run is there. Boom Shakalaka says, since John Ross is healthy, scratch every week, Hawks get him. He killed the Hawks last year. Well, it looks like you're on pace to be able to bring Antonio Brown in at some point, Josh Gordon in, David Moore's playing well, Brett Swain. You've got guys you're protecting on the practice squad. Colby Parkinson's coming back into the fray at some point, Boom Shakalaka. If those weren't the case, if you were a lot lighter at the wide receiver position, I'd say maybe do it. The other factor that comes into play here is that they just don't show a willingness, the Cincinnati Bengals, to make trade deadline deals. They hold everybody over a barrel. They ask for the moon and the stars and the sun. They're not going to get it. I would be even surprised if you see a guy like Carlos Dunlap traded, who absolutely should be traded by the Cincinnati Bengals, but they're just not going to do it. Just not going to do it. But I know you guys, I like John Ross. He's a fast guy. Maybe this offseason we take a look at him if the Bengals were to release him, maybe. Put a flyer on the guy. D-Nugget said, let's talk about the awesomeness of Michael Dixon right now with goal line punts. Well, why stop at the goal line? Let's start on his boomers. The guy always had a big leg coming out, but he's been showing off the big leg now more than ever since his first year. He's kicking those 50, 60 yarders and flipping the field when we need it time and time again. And it seems like he's almost automatic now on kicking inside the 20. Say nothing of kicking inside the 5. He has had multiple games, I think, where he's kicked inside the 5. The defense has not exactly been able to always take advantage of it. We had the one game with Dallas. We got the safety because of it. But when I say that we've got the best special teams unit in the NFL right now, I think we really do in all facets. Kick return, coverage units, punt return units, kick return units. It's all blending together perfectly. Even Myers has kicked a 55-yarder this year. You know, that when that special teams unit is holding up its end of the bargain, that's a big part of this success of this team. And it was a big part of our success when we won the Super Bowl as well. So fantastic development of Nixon. He's having a Pro Bowl year. I'm loving the fact we got that guy in the 5th round. I hope we eventually, when it comes to the kicking game, look to do the same thing with the kicking game. Eventually take a 5th rounder and take the best kicker in an entire draft. You got a guy you got slot, you know he's going to be that good. Do it. I think it's a good investment. Andre says Metcalf, Lockett, Gordon, and Ross for next year. Well, that'd be a stacked unit. Boom Shakalaka says, my first love was for the Sonics in the mid-90s. I can understand why, Boom Shakalaka. It was a great team, exciting team, fun basketball team to watch. And they played great. Offensive and defensive side of the ball, complete teams. They moved to a cornfield. Yeah, they went to Oklahoma. I can't believe Oklahoma City got him stolen from us. Seattle's best over Starbucks. Eltheria, what is up, Eltheria? Good to see you in the chat as always. I got to see the Sonics for the Suns in the 93 playoffs. It was an amazing experience even for a 10-year-old kid. The Sonics were the real deal. They really were. And it was sad that those Sonics teams couldn't get a little bit more success in the playoffs. They were just kind of right there, just couldn't crack through. Those were some tough teams you had to play through the AFC side, whatever, the West Coast Conference at the time. I mean, the Suns with Charles and San Antonio had David Robinson, and the Jazz running with Stockton and Malone at that time. It seemed like there was just a lot of really good teams out there in the West Coast Conference as the East was kind of falling off at that time, it kind of felt like. But, man, those were fun teams to watch. I would bet my life savings that the media will bring up Tannehill, Henry, and Mahomes even more in the MVP debate now that Russ is clearly ahead. Maybe. It'll be interesting to see how it falls away if he would seemingly be the front runner, absolutely. But I don't know. Carl says, brah, the officials have been letting people play. So you're telling me there's a chance. Yeah, they're letting them play. Eltheria says Whitney Marcellus would be a huge get. He would be a pretty big upgrade, Athilia. As far as the Leo end, you'd allow Benson Mayowa to go back in the rotational role. Stuff just gets into a little bit more, things fit into things a little bit better. Everything kind of comes together a little bit better in that case. So, yeah, he would help. I don't know if he'd be a massive upgrade, but he would be at least a significant probably upgrade versus what we have. Seahawks would still be ranked 6th. Watch, Packers will still be number 1. I don't know. Maybe. There's a lot of people, though, that are trying to take the wheels out of our cart here with we haven't played a quality opponent yet. So, you know, it's not our fault that we're playing the NFC East and the AFC East this year. You know, it's our turn to play them. I don't know what to tell these people that get all worried about the fact we haven't gotten a quality opponent. So what? Media loves to stroke Rodgers. Yes, they do. Media will make excuses. Yeah, they probably will. Father Time is undefeated. He is. Eltheria says, assuming David Irving doesn't sign with the Raiders, what do you think about bringing him in? Eltheria, this has been one of my great counters during this live stream show, is to say that rather than going out and going out and plucking, let's say, making these trades for these guys that may not upgrade your pass rush or be marginal upgrades, giving up the draft capital you don't want to give up because you already have your first and your third rounder out the door due to the Jamal Adams trade plus the first rounder next year. So you've got to be pretty protective of those remaining draft picks. You could go out right now and sign Nate Irving and Clay Matthews, and along with the Snacks Harrison signing, significantly have upgraded your pass rush and done enough moves as far as I'm concerned at that point. Do I see them doing that? It doesn't necessarily look like they're going to at this point, but that would be the moves that if you made all those moves in conjunction to where you could really, really reinforce the ranks enough. It would be just enough at that point. I think you get Rasheem Green back at some point, a little more development of Alton Robinson, guys into the rotational roles. I think that would be good enough. Assuming you... yeah, it's weird seeing Russell Wilson get time in the pocket, says D-Boy. Yeah, it is weird. It is weird seeing him get as much time. He's had a lot of time where he just sits back there and pad the ball and kind of looking around, and it's nice. It's nice to see him not getting the hell beat out of him. I was really worried about it this year with him in that respect. When you look at a guy like Dak go down, I've said this, it's amazing that we've been able to have the health that we've had with Russell through the years and all the hits that he's taken. Especially watching some of these random hits that quarterbacks take that knock him out for 3, 4, 5, 6 weeks. Oh, we got a lot of John Ross love here in the chat. All right, you guys. Hey, as a reclamation project, and if the Bengals let him go, not going to cost a lot of money. Not going to cost a lot. So, maybe. Shervin says DJ Fluker got benched for a rookie today. It feels good to nail that Lewis pick. Yeah, it does. It's good that they really had their sight line on it early on, didn't they, Shervins? Because they released DJ Fluker right almost the minute after they drafted Damian Lewis. And it's one of the reasons I was as high as I was on Fluker is because it showed how much faith the front office had in him in being an upgrade. And again, not just an upgrade in run blocking, which he was going to be, but an upgrade in pass protection as well. We've gotten phenomenal level of play out of Damian Lewis. He's been a fantastic bright spot for us this year. He may even slide his way into eventually being a Pro Bowler for us here down the road, if not even this season maybe. He's that good of a player. D-Boy says, if Griffin wanted $8 million for 3 years, would you do it? Absolutely, I'd do it. That's plenty well. But the problem is, D-Boy, I think he's going to want into that $12, $13 million a year phase and a lot of guaranteed money. And that's where I'm not going to do it. Not for $4 or $5 million more will I do it. I don't know if I can even do $10 million. But $8 million seems about right. $8 million seems about acceptable. Sherman says, watching McVay and Shanahan have to overcome their quarterbacks' deficiencies has made me more grateful to have Russell Wilson. I'm glad you saw the same thing, Shervins, because that's what I was seeing as well, is you were watching these two guys really running very varied attacks, trying to do different things against defenses, but then you're watching the quarterbacks and their limitations as a thrower really hold it back in this game that I was watching early, especially in the first half at least. So it opened my eyes to that a little bit as well. I saw the same thing, man. It's an astute observation. And boy, if those guys ever get some legitimate quarterbacks, either of those two head coaches, we're maybe in a little bit more trouble here. If they get some really good quarterback play, we could be in some trouble. D-Mac. D-Boy says, how do you see our next 2 games going with the Cards and the Niners? Do we win both games or go 1-1? What do you think? I do see over the next 5 games 1 loss coming from our division here. Over the next 5 games. I see us losing the Bills game as well and going 3-2. Who do I see us losing to? I probably see us losing to the Cardinals in one of the games, I guess, if I have to guess. I think we're a tough matchup for the Niners, and I think at this point right now, I think we sweep the Niners on our 2 games this year. Boom shakalaka. Any defensive coordinator in history get more camera time than Robert Saleh? I don't know. The camera loves that iron jaw. That Iron John, those baby brown eyes. I don't know. Yeah, I guess not, man. They're all over filming him, man. He's got to give a little bit of his next check to Fox and to ESPN on the next check for all the screen time they gave him. Barry says Quill is going to get paid by another team, get them extra picks. I'd prefer to go probably that route above anything else at this point, Barry. I've not been showed enough by Quill to pay him that money. If another team's going to go out there and give him $10, $11, $12 million a year, that's going to return back as a 3rd-round pick or exactly the pick that you used to select him originally. So you just restock with what you lost at that point. Perfectly fine with that. Perfectly fine. 5 All-Pros. Jarl, what's up, Jarl? He says 5 All-Pros. Let's see. He says Jamal, Bobby, DK, Russ, and Dicko this year. Maybe. Jamal might have a little bit of a harder time if he can't get on the field a little bit more, but okay. I'm good with that. Tyler, Dwayne Brown, maybe Posick and Griffin can sneak into the Pro Bowl too. And yeah, you might even see a guy like Dwayne Brown sneak into the second team All-Pro too, kind of in that range as well. Diggs has had a little bit of a tough year. Dan Barnes have a little bit of a tough year because he's not on the field as much. It might be harder for those guys, but I'd love to see Posick in the Pro Bowl, man. I'd be looking so good on my Posick prediction at the start of the year if he gets to the Pro Bowl after where I was putting him and slotting him. D-Boy says, Dixon is a player that is overlooked. He is so important to our team, and we need to pay him when it's time to keep him. And I think you'll be able to. It costs you $4 or $5 million a season, maybe. There's a reason why you do that at this point. Carroll values special teams. Carroll's not going to probably be going anywhere anytime soon. I would expect that signing to happen. You can always franchise tag the punter if you have to because that value is going to be pretty low on franchising him, and there's not going to be somebody else you're going to probably franchise. So we'll see. CJ Schnack got here late. My YouTube decided not to give me the notification. It does that sometimes, DJ Schnack. I don't know. Sometimes it's just glitchy about that. But man, better late than never. I'm glad you got in here. You know, should have a lot of good stuff for you to go back and watch later on if I don't cover anything here on the current. But thank you for coming in, man. Please do smash that like button if you're in here right now. And if you're not already subscribed, please do subscribe to the channel. It helps us grow immensely and helps me on my algorithm, get me searched out there for people to find me and stuff. Jarl says KJ might sneak into the Pro Bowl as well. If we go 14-2, I smell double-digit Pro Bowlers. Well, yeah, you asked that as a question, sorry, and I said that as a statement. Yeah, I think KJ's on a Pro Bowl level right now. I think he goes if the season ended right now tomorrow, he's in the Pro Bowl. So yeah, I think we've got as Pro Bowlers right now. We've got Jamal Adams, Russell Wilson, DK Metcalf. I do think Dwayne Brown gets in there. We got Jamal Adams. That goes 5 at that point. You know, Bobby KJ, 7. You know, a couple other guys you could get in there from Jaron Reed could slide in there. Damian Lewis is a guy who maybe can slide in there with the kind of year that he's had. Don't undersell him. Chris Carson. Yeah, you can get up into that 10 Pro Bowl area. Absolutely. Bobby is not an all-pro, bro. Go watch Brendan Nelson, Seahawks video, Bobby Wagner. He'll be an all-pro right now if he plays at his current level he's on, Daniel. I almost 99% guarantee you if Bobby plays at the level he's played at through the first 5 games of the year, he will be an all-pro this season. But some of that has to do, again, with Daniel, is just the middle linebacker play throughout the league is not at an all-time great level at this moment. We don't have teams all across the board that are stacked with just fantastic middle linebackers. It's kind of a light position at the moment. Carl asked, does this bye week affect our momentum? I don't think so, Carl. I think it helps us get back guys we really do need to get back that we're suffering from their loss. Jamal Adams specifically. But no, I think there's guys who needed this. Micah Iupati was dealing with his ankle thing. I think Dwayne Browns has been dealing with his ankle thing from game 1 when Micah Iupati rolled up into him. I think there's some guys that needed a kind of extra week here to kind of get themselves back a little bit. Jarl says Bobby might get in on reputation. He had an all-pro last year. It's a great point. Some of it will be reputation. Some of it will be that he's still playing at a very good level at the middle linebacker position. Is he playing at Defensive Player of the Year status? No, he's not there anymore. But is he still playing at an above average level? Is he still playing at a Pro Bowl level? Yeah. Barry says Hawks go undefeated. Russ throws 5,000 yards, 50 touchdowns, no MVP votes. Sadly, Barry, I could see that being a feasible scenario. Shervin says, I was just thinking about how Metcalf has a legit shot at first-team All-Pro or at least second-team All-Pro. Hopkins is the only other guy that will for sure be first-team Pro. I could see him having a great shot at it if he keeps on his current pace, Shervins. I mean, if he's putting up 80 catches or 75 catches, but he's putting up 1,600 yards, 16, 17 touchdowns, who's putting up the better year at that point? Who's the guy that's overtaking him there? No, I think he's on a fast track for that first-team All-Pro. Absolutely. Daniel says, I think AB is a great signing for us, but I also think we need to do is block him going to a contender like Green Bay, or secondary wouldn't be able to stop Devontae and AB. Your thoughts? Yeah, I'd be okay with it for that reason. In addition, I hadn't thought of that as the reason to bring him in, Daniel. I just like the thought of reinforcing our wide receiver rank, being able to protect against the potential of injury to the wide receiver position. We saw Lockett get beat up last year on his leg, and he was never kind of the same guy. And then we only really had DK, and Malik Turner was out in the playoff game getting quality snaps at one point or another. Don't want to see that again. So just on that basis alone, I'd like to see Antonio Brown. But for the reasons you mentioned in addition, there's teams out there like the Niners. There's teams out there like the Green Bay Packers. Teams out there like the New Orleans Saints who could use wide receiver help. Do they maybe bring that guy in instead? Yeah, they could. So you could do well to not only add but take away from what? Great point. Great point, Daniel. Ian Bonilla. What's up, Ian? What do you think our record's going to be this season? My record prediction right now is Ian going to be 14-2. I think the next 5 games are our toughest stretch of the year. I think we go 3-2 over the next 5 games, including a loss at Buffalo. Then I think we go 6-0 on our back end games when you get to play a lot of slight sallies, a lot of just weak in the knee type teams at that point. So I think you end up at 14-2 with the first seed, the number 1 bye, first round bye, home field advantage throughout the playoffs. And I do think that gets you to the Super Bowl as it has historically. Media hates Seattle. Yeah, they don't seem to sometimes like us as much, but we're in southern Alaska. It's just hard for them to... Many of them don't even watch our games. They're in bed by the time our game starts. Rodgers lost his cool after their first INT and couldn't get it back, but that's good for us. Woo! Yep, he's got a little bit of that. He's got a little bit of that all check out process to him. You know, that's the thing with Rodgers. It's part of the reason I don't like him. Somebody asked on what quarterback kind of gets on my nerves or rankles me a little bit. He's one of those guys. Where it's just like body language stuff. It starts to come into play, and it's the leadership stuff, the question about that's kind of followed him and plagued him through the years. Where is his leadership? Is he a strong leader? Is he a leader of men like we see with Russell? And there's a staunch difference between those two guys and the energy they put out on game day. Shervin says Green Bay defense got torched and made me feel better about our defense. Yeah, they got challenged today. They really did. Just a bad game for them. I think that maybe they were feeling themselves and their press a little bit. Maybe they let their foot off the gas a little bit. I still think Green Bay is a very solid team. But it's good to see them lose it. Still is very good to see them lose it. So Bleed Blue and Green says, how did the rest of the NFC West go this weekend? I was enjoying the bye and wasn't able to catch any games. San Francisco 49ers beat up on the Rams pretty darn good. Didn't slaughter them, but kind of gave it to them throughout that game. Led, seems like, the whole game. And then we had the Cardinals playing tomorrow. So that's all. We'll find out tomorrow. I think they play at the Cowboys. We'll find out there. Good night, Jeff. I appreciate you hanging on for the full stream, Jeff. You've been in here since the minute 1. I appreciate you, man. Started it, snowed about 3 to 4 inches here. You're right. It's looking like one of those winters in Montana, man. I feel for you, Jeff. They get hard. They get hard. If you need to, come on over here and hang with me in Maui, dude. If you need a breakaway at some point or another, man, I know how those summers, those winters can go in Montana. There's no more brutal place in the country than Montana in the winter. It's tough. It's so tough. Micah04 says Seattle 5-0, Rams 4-2, Cardinals 3-2, Niners 3-3. Yeah, looking pretty good. Got some room for error, don't we, Micah? A little room for error, a little 2-game buffer. Put in the chat, 1 a.m. local time, I guess 10 minutes. Not bad for the vast info of answers. I'm on top of it even quicker than that, I think, Blue Boon Grain. So I think Ricardo Reyes, what is up, Ricardo? How you doing? Najee, got a couple of new people in here right at the end. So we are about we're into hour, I think, somewhere 5 or so here. And so I think we're going to probably get to wrapping it up here because my voice is starting to go and I need to get some food. But let's get some of the last bit of questions in. I know I've got some new people in here, so if I didn't, you new folks in on the chat right now, post a couple of your last questions you might have in here. I think we've kind of covered most of what we want to talk about here. We feel good about this team, I think. I love the energy I'm getting from the 12th man. I'd read some stories from some pundits out there, talking heads as far as Seahawks are concerned. A lot of hand-wringing, a lot of guys going, gosh, well, our strength of schedule, our quality of schedule hasn't been good, etc. But I don't get that feeling from you guys. You guys kind of get the same, you're in the same place I am where, yeah, there's some work to be done. There's some moves to be made. It's not perfect. But you're 5-0, for the first time in franchise history. That's an achievement. You got through your bye week relatively healthy. We have one player lost for the season due to injury at this point. That's in so much of a better place than where we were last year and what we were dealing with. Reinforcements are on the way. There's moves that can be made. We should feel pretty good about this team and where we stand. We shouldn't be in wonderment or everybody's got some holes. Green Bay showed they got some holes. There's no perfect teams out there. But we got Russ. He's cooking. MVP, DK Metcalf, the new Megatron, a defense with playmakers, and it's only going to get better as the year goes on. I feel good about this. Feel good. You and Tyrell, good morning, man. Hope you're doing well. Great set of results for the Hawks. We couldn't ask for a better return this week, Ewan. The only better return for us is going to be if the Cardinals lose tomorrow. That's the only thing that's going to be better for us. But everything's set up for us real nice. Then we get the Cardinals on a short week. They got to play Monday night. Then we get them next Sunday. So they got a shortened week to come play us at that point. Love it. Love it. The deck is stacking up very nicely for us, folks. Very nicely. If we'd sat at the start of the season and said, okay, you're going to arrive at week 5, 5-0, one player lost due to season-ending injury, this all looking pretty good, I think we feel okay about it. Feel okay about it. Najee says the Packers are the ultimate finesse teams. When things are going really well, they go really well. But if you get physical with them, they can fold as we saw last year with San Francisco. Yeah, they seem like a little bit, I think maybe to your point, Najee, is a front-running team. As long as they're up on teams and they can just push you down a little bit, they're hard to deal with. But you punch them right back in the mouth, and yeah, I think they are a little bit finesse in how you said. They like to run the ball, which is always hard to put a finesse team in that respect. But specifically getting pressure on Rodgers at this point, he's one of those quarterbacks who wants that clean pocket. You get him unraveled a little bit. You get him with some happy feet. Maybe you can get to him a little bit. So great to see the Packers maybe kind of get struck a little bit here. Ricardo Reyes says, I think the Seattle goes 9-0. Could be, man. I wasn't sure if that's where they're at, but I think that's right. If you're on track, that's what I was thinking too, is it's the Bills is the first loss of the season. That's where I've got us losing our first game. So I think that is the 10th game of the year, if I'm not mistaken, and I could be wrong. Ricardo asks, Josh Gordon's coming back anytime soon. Unfortunately, we just don't know, Ricardo. We've heard no indicators, no rumors. You heard after 2 weeks to start the season, it was supposed to be after just the first 2 weeks, but then we've heard no rumors coming out. I would be, if I'm making a guess at this point, I'm going to go on a limb, Ricardo, and say Commissioner is going to keep this to a year suspension from when he was suspended last year, which was, I think, right around week 10 or so. So you're probably looking at him coming back somewhere between week 8 to 10 at this point. Wish we could get him back sooner, but at least we're getting him back at some point. I'm absolutely sure of that. He's going to play some games this year in a Seattle Seahawks uniform. CJ Snacks, I'm confused on strength of schedule. Is higher number harder or easier? Higher number harder or easier? Oh, I guess you're talking about their percentage of victory would be, so a higher percentage of winning would be worse for you. You want a lower percentage of victory because that's a lower strength of schedule. So just to give you an idea on this, guys, when you look at the strength of schedule of our remaining teams this year, so if we take all of their records and we take it into a cumulative amount right now, the cumulative record for the teams we are going to play for the rest of the season is 17-28. So you have all these people right now that are knocking us about the teams we played up until this point, saying, oh, the schedule's so weak and you guys haven't played anybody and wait till you got to play somebody. When's that going to happen? I'm listening. We're not going to play anybody through the year. Maybe Buffalo is the toughest game on our schedule right now. So it's not till the playoffs we're going to have to play anybody tough. So it is what it is, man. We get an easier schedule this year. There's nothing to apologize in that, Ricardo, because, look, we got the toughest schedule in the NFL last year. It just flipped for us this year in our favor. Why shouldn't we benefit from it? We had to take the detriment of it last season. Ian says, how do you think we would do if we got to play the Packers in the playoffs? Ian, I'd feel a whole lot better about that game if we're playing it at home versus having to go to Lambeau in the middle of winter. As we saw today with Aaron Rodgers, he's a much different quarterback playing in Lambeau than he is when he plays on the road. And if he's got to play in some inclement weather, wind blowing, rainy in Seattle, that might work to our favor a little bit. I've seen it work to our favor in the past, like it was in the NFC Conference Championship in 2014 when that was a really rainy game, an inclement Seattle-type weather game. I think it's a different game wholly versus us having to go on the road versus us having to play at home, fans or not. Bleed Blue and Green, 10 minutes on the dot. The fact that you take your time is priceless. Customer service through the roof. Hey, man, I'm here for you guys, Bleed Blue and Green. You know it, man. I love you. You're my peoples. I got to do right by you. Calvin Johnson, old wide receiver for the Detroit Lions, is Megatron. That's right. That is correct. I follow him on IG, and he's always posting in Seattle Seahawks uniform. He's happy to be with us. Oh, he absolutely is. Josh Gordon wants to be here. It makes it that much sadder that they're not letting him off his suspension to finally play. I think the kid's finally turned the corner here. He deserves a shot. He was only suspended for the drug stuff. We've seen violent offenders get extra chances here in the NFL. We've seen guys who've hit women, done much more egregious, worse things. Don't hold this guy over a barrel anymore, Goodell. Let him off. Free this man. Free this man. Free him. Ricardo says, also, I'm the only Seattle's fan in Central California. I'm proud of it. I'll give it to you. They're very loyal in Central California. They're Raiders or 49ers. I lived in San Jose for a little while. And, man, when I'd wear my Seahawk hat around, I got so much stuff for them. I didn't care, of course, because, it's 49er fans. Who gives it? Who cares? Boom Shakalaka says, Gordon should like Seattle. They're the only team that give him a chance on him. Maybe true enough. True enough. I think he wanted to come to Seattle. I think he had other chances, Boom Shakalaka. People didn't put the waiver claim in on him because his agent had told everybody that he wouldn't go to them if they put that waiver claim on him. So I think Seattle had kind of an inside shot on him at that point. But, yeah, I'm glad to see that he's on board with us as well. James Glenn says, Green Bay has an easier schedule than we do. Only tough matchup left for them is the Tennessee Titans. It's very much true. I think they have to play the 49ers as well. That might be a tough matchup for them too, James. Don't forget the NFL's a matchup game, and as we saw last year, the Niners are a tough matchup for the Green Bay Packers, just as far as they do match up a bit. But that's why it's a big thing for them to lose this week, James. If I'm looking at us getting to 14-2, there's a good chance that there's a way and a path for Green Bay to get there as well. You need them to lose a couple of these games along the trek so we can get to that spot and get one game better than them, especially because we're not going to play them and not have that tiebreaker. So, big that they lost today. Najee says the most disappointing team this year, I'd say the Vikings. I could see that. Some of it's been their injury situation, losing Linval Joseph, Michael Pierce, that decimated the inside of their defensive tackle position. You lose Anthony Barr, their best linebacker probably. They've lost cornerbacks. They got a couple of young guys out there that they're trotting out. It was going to be harder for them. Are they my most disappointing team? The Eagles are probably up there too, with as weak as that division's been and as bad as they've looked. They'd be another team for me that'd be a candidate for that in a G. They'd be another candidate for me. Wow, it's only 9 in Hawaii. Yep, 9 o'clock in Hawaii. I got a couple hours left for bedtime. It's 8 in the morning for me. We're on the opposite side of the world from everybody here in Hawaii, man. It's opposite time completely. Daniel says, I feel if we didn't sign Josh Gordon, Goodell would have reinstated him already. Maybe. It's possible, bro. Green Bay has to play the Bears twice. Khalil Mack will be trouble for Aaron Rodgers. I agree on that one. I think that they're not necessarily going to get just 2 easy wins in that game. I could see that being at least one of those games problem for them with Rodgers. And the Green Bay doesn't get to lean back on the fact that Mitchell Trubisky is going to be the quarterback and he's going to muck things up to help them win those games. Foles, whether he wins the game or not, he's probably not going to lose you the game. And with that Bears defense, that's what they need at quarterback right now. So could be a determining factor. If we can get them to lose the Titan game or the Niner game and then getting them to lose one of these Bear games, they get to 3 losses, we get to 14. There's our path. There's our path to winning it. Ricardo says Atlanta's the most disappointment. Maybe. I wasn't as sold on their defense, and they haven't been good over the last couple of years. So it's hard to necessarily point to them because I didn't see as much upside in them. I always thought they were a little bit of an in-between team that's always kind of sitting there in that 8-8 mark. Just kind of always holding in that spot to me to a degree. But maybe. It's a good suggestion. Daniel says, people bring in Dan Quinn. Falcons had a worse defense the past 5 years. He did good with the best defensive roster in the NFL, in NFL's history. No better than Saleh with the 49ers, defensive coordinator. Good with Stack. I see where you're coming from with that, Daniel, with Quinn, and that he's maybe overrated as a coach or even overrated as a coordinator because he had a lot of talent to work with. I have said that if we do go out and we go away from Norton, I would rather we bring in somebody with a little bit different ideas into place. If it's not a young mastermind type that you're bringing out of the college ranks, then if it's a young guy that just has different ideas than what Pete Carroll necessarily has, that he doesn't just go for a hire of nepotism or for a retread, but that he goes for a dynamic hire that can actually bring some new ideas into play rather than some of the same tired, stale stuff that we've seen, like the covered two defense being reinvented, or our front four doesn't get to the quarterback, so now what we'll try to do is just blitz a bunch, even though we've not scouted or tried to bring in players that necessarily are good blitzers. That's the stuff that leads you to being a bad defensive football team. CJ Snack says, I'm still confused how we won last week. IG, we decided to come play football on the last drive. Yeah, I mean, your defense did just enough. You played great special teams. You know, there's a lot of factors into last week's game. You know, and the defense, gave up some yards in the first half, but they kept the Vikings within earshot to be able to get back up on top of them. And, you know, this offense, as dynamic as it is, it can score 21 points in a minute, as it did in the third quarter. You're going to see games like that with our team, I think, at times. You're going to see games like this during the season at times. But the key with us, when you got Russell Wilson, when you got the guy, CJ, who's going to retire all time with the most fourth quarter comebacks in league history, and he's going to be by a wide margin over the second place guy behind him when he retires. That's not a sample size stat. That's not a freak stat. That's a stat indicative of a guy who is clutch and is able to do those fourth quarter comebacks sometimes at will. Ricardo Reyes says, do I think we'll keep all of our star players next year? I could certainly see Dwayne Brown retiring after this year. I could certainly see Bobby Wagner retiring after this year. Very feasible situations. As far as a star player leaving and going somewhere, Chris Carson is a guy I probably would see going somewhere else. I don't think you sign him to a contract. Aside from that, I don't think I see any other stars going anywhere else. I wouldn't think so. Ricardo Reyes asked, would I sign Chris Carson to an extension? I'd have two caveats on this, Ricardo. Number one, my first caveat is I'm not signing him to an extension prior to the end of the year. I need to see a full season of Chris Carson playing through the whole season where he doesn't get injured and have his season cut short due to injury, as he has through the first two of his first three seasons in the NFL. The secondary aspect of this that I absolutely need to see from him is the fumbling problem completely removed. And it has been so far. It has been. If he does that, then even at that point, I'm not giving him top of the market contract at the running back position. He's going to have to take a discount and understand that nobody's paying running backs anymore. He's just going to get maybe a 2-3 year, $15, $16, $17 million deal or something. Under that caveat, under that circumstance, then yes. But at the end of the day, if I really had my druthers, let him go in free agency. Every year draft a running back between the 4th and 7th round. You'll do just fine going with that approach. Ricardo says also, do you think we should change our defensive formation and play more man and not give up so much yards? The problem with switching your defensive formation to man, Ricardo, is that you have drafted guys and put guys in that are zone guys. Shaquille Griffin is a zone cover corner. Trey Flowers is a zone cover corner. Maybe Dunbar could play a little bit more man because he's got a little more of that background, but your linebackers are zone linebackers. They're not man-on-man linebackers. You know, you've not scouted for man guys. If you want to play man, you got to scout and bring in man cover guys. They brought in zone guys. So you just can't switch that. It's the same thing with going to the blitz heavy stuff. Why do last year we were a top 10 blitzing team, yet we end out the year as 29th in sacks? Why is that the case? That doesn't make any sense. If you're blitzing that much, you should be at the very least top 15. The reason is because you didn't bring players in that have blitzing as their number one skill set, that have an ability to disguise their blitz as their number one skill set. So you're asking them to do something that's not their best natural ability, and then they failed at it, as we have failed at it this year with blitzing as much as we've tried to blitz. So just flipping a certain thing like that and expecting it to work, not necessarily. Not necessarily. The Legend 27, we will split against the Rams. I could see it happening. At this point, they're the likely team for us to lose against if we're going to lose against one of our NFC West opponents. Jeremy Bohm. I was hoping they would bring Wade Phillips in as a consultant to help bring a new set of eyes to Pete's defense. I'd love to see it, but the problem with that, I think, is that Wade tends to run the 3-4 attacking scheme, which is almost the complete opposite of the 4-3 under read and react scheme that Pete Carroll runs. I mean, that's such a diametrically opposed type defenses that they're just completely opposite. So I don't know how much Wade is able to provide you if you're not in that same attacking way. But if we're planning on still being this blitz heavy team, then maybe it would make some sense. It couldn't maybe hurt. Yovan, hi, it's nice when you were on a bye week with a perfect record. Oh, Yovan, it feels so good, doesn't it? It feels so good, especially when you're watching division foes or your number second place team lose. That feels even better, especially when you go watch Green Bay Packers, the other main competitor you have for that number one seed and home field advantage, lose. Feels good. James, I agree. I don't think Pete and Wade Phillips would get along. There's something about that dynamic, I think, that would just bristle. Just something that would bristle. Andrew Zavala. Yo, this is like a 6-hour stream, laughing my ass off. Yeah, you guys keep me on for this so much. I don't know how you guys talk me into this. I don't know how you do it. Every week I'm like, I'm going to keep it to 4 hours, and then I'm off. And that's all I'm doing, and that's all you're going to do. That's all you're going to do. You get on 4 hours, and then you off. But with that said, Andrew, I think that this is the time we probably are good to start to call it here. I'd like to do another stream this week at some point. I will try to shoot to get you guys out some of that word. I'm going to shoot with DMAC this week. We're going to be on his channel at about, let's call it 6 o'clock Pacific Standard Time. We're going to do a stream on his channel for an hour on Tuesday. And then I will try to do another stream at some point during the week this week to make up for the lost Saturday time we had this week if I can, if it's possible, if we can pull it. Either way, let's get in the last of our questions. I don't want to leave anybody out, so if you got any last questions, we'll get them in. I'll cover them for you. But then we will wrap this up. Wade Phillips is a 3-4 coach. Pete is a 4-3 coach. Yep, that's my thing with it. That's why I don't think Wade has a lot to offer, because what is he going to offer a 4-3 coach? And not just a 3-4 coach to a 4-3. It's not like Wade Phillips is a 3-4 coach in attacking scheme and Pete Carroll's a 4-3 coach in attacking scheme. It's Wade Phillips 3-4 coach in attacking and Pete Carroll in a 4-3 read and react, more of a passive kind of defense to it. So I just don't think that they would jive. Kernut Uptime. What's up, Kernut? Welcome on in the chat. It was epic to see the 49ers pounded by the Dolphins last week. Oh, it felt good. It felt good. And that loss is going to haunt them, I think, as far as trying to push for playoff positioning later on, if they are able to get a little bit more healthy. But man, it's nice to see them lose. It's always a good week when the Niners lose and we get a last-second fourth quarter comeback victory, especially to go to 5-0, especially to have then the bye week right ahead of us. This last 2 weeks, it's just to get to enjoy it and just savor it. Just savor what we have right now. It's nice. I kept up the chat, Andrew. I did a good job today, man. I was up on it. Boom shakalaka. Shaka right back at you, buddy. Do you think we will get Bobby's wish of a black jersey with green trim? If the NFL can stop being a-holes about the jersey situation, right? Because right now, one of the big problems with the jersey situation is that they only allow for 2 offsets. So you've got your lime green color rush, which I think all of us are sort of like, eh. I mean, if it's between lime green color rush and black on green, is this even a competition at this point? But the big thing is we've wanted to get the retro stuff, Andrew. You know, get some of the 80s gear with the silver stuff. I've always thought that would look cool. But no. The NFL, it's you only get 2 because we got the wolf grays that they like to run out every once in a while too. So no, I don't think you're going to see it anytime soon unless the NFL starts to relax some of their stuff with that. Sadly enough, I think not. Yo, Van, sorry we just caught you at the start. There's a lot of good stuff on my record. I got the stream here, though. We did 6 good hours today, man, but my voice is definitely going, and my belly's rumbling. I need to get some food in my. I need to get some food in my belly. My belly is empty. I need some food in my belly. CJ Snack, the Dolphins shut out the Jets today. That was a laugh. Yeah, the Jets are a pathetic organization, and I think they have finally a decent general manager in play. I think they could turn it around. They got some draft capital from us for Jamal Adams. It was a good trade for them. Good draft capital from us for that trade. But at the end of the day, they are an organization that needs to get a new head coach in there with a more assured vision. They just haven't gone with the right head coaches lately, and they need to pick the right one with the next hire. That's really the key for them. I know it's maybe just the duh moment of this live stream show, but it's the one where they've really just not gotten it right for too long. Ryan Hurd loves the color rush. All right, Ryan. I mean, I don't hate it. The problem I don't like with it, Ryan, is the fact that you don't get to do the 80s retro stuff because you run the color rush. If we could be able to run the 80s stuff with the color rush, then I'd be okay with it. But the fact that they only give you those 2 offsets is the time where it gets a little bit rough. JSD says, Are the Kim? I don't know. What do you mean on that, JSD? You and Tyrell, do you think we'll keep Diggs? Not if he keeps playing at the level that he's playing at. He's carrying a pretty decent salary cap hit, even though he is moving into the last year of his deal next year. He's carrying something like an $8 million cap hit. And right now he's not playing very good the safety position. Some of this is that we're asking him to play cover 2 rather than the single high look, which I think he'd be more comfortable in. But with that said, he's not playing at the same level he played last year. Andrew Zala, the helmet room is even dumber. I agree. You can't do the offsets on the helmet rule either. It's also idiotic. It doesn't make any sense. You could sell so much more jerseys by being able to run this stuff out there. When does the NFL ever turn down money? Boom Shakalaka, NBA has 1 million jerseys, and they sell 1 million of those jerseys. It's smart of them to do that. Why limit yourself? Why? GSD, are the lime jerseys related to the city of Seattle being the Emerald City? Maybe. Maybe so. I don't know what the decision-making is behind that one. Andrew Zala says, how many Hawk games have I been to? Well, I went to a decent amount of Hawk games in the 80s, a couple of Hawks games in the 90s, and I've probably been to about, I don't know, like 10 games in the 2000s cumulatively. So I don't know if in my life in person, maybe like 25 games, something like that. Ballpark in it, obviously. That's not an exact figure. Don't hold me to that. I'm not going to show you the tickets. I don't have the records. CJ Snacks, the color rush look like pajamas. I think so too. That's my problem with them, is they look a little pajama-like. And they're really bright. They're really bright. Really bright. There was one thing though where we were wearing it on one week where somebody said like one of our players was able to kind of hide and maybe get lost a little bit on the green of the field. I don't know if that's the truth, but if that's the case, then we can keep them. Kernat, the Hawks could pound the Cardinals if we chill out with the injuries. I think so, and I'm actually sitting right now, Kernat, thinking that this could be a double-digit win for us. This could be one of our blowouts of the year. As funny as that sounds, I still like the Cardinals. I think they're going to be tough. And I'm probably overselling myself. I'm a little over my skis on this prediction. But them losing, for me, the big key here is them losing Chandler Jones, Budda Baker, their second best defensive player, playing with that problem ligament with his thumb, so he's not maybe at 100%. They don't have a lot of pass rush around it. Cardinals offense is maybe not taking the step forward that we thought. I'm just kind of maybe factoring in there's a good possibility we can maybe come in there and give it to them. But injuries are, we're going to need the injury. Like you said, we need to chill out with the injuries. It's gotten a little bit much with that at times. We're doing okay right now. We got the reinforcements coming. They've been safe with stuff. We should get Jamal back, should get Dunbar back hopefully here. So we should be okay. But injuries are always the thing to monitor here with the situation. Construction worker Bright. Daniel says, Tyler Lockett plus DK Metcalf both due for new contracts after next year. Do we keep both going into the future or trade Tyler? You probably are just going to have to make your peace with signing DK eventually on this. You've got another year out to make this decision, so you get another year of Tyler after this point, luckily. But when you're looking at it, you're going to have to probably pay DK Metcalf somewhere in the neighborhood of around $25 to $28 million per year at that time. Already having paid Russell at that point in time somewhere in the nature of $35 to $37 million. You're just not going to be able to afford to then pay $14 million a year, let's say, for Tyler Lockett in addition to that. Low balance, right? Got to low balance things off a little bit. So we'll have to probably go a little bit cheaper at the wide receiver position at that time. James Glenn, Metcalf will still be on his rookie year. I think that James, Daniel, I think, is meaning James for after next year, because Tyler, I think, is still on another. Tyler's not a free agent after this year. He still has another year on his deal as well. So I think, James, he's talking about the year after next year. So we get some time to not have to worry about this problem at the moment, But yes, down the road, we're going to have to definitely probably make a decision on Tyler. GASD, could we do a protest to get Lynch back? Well, if you do that protest, GSD, I will be up on that picket line right with you. Because I would love to see some Marshawn Lynch back this year. Especially when I watch Travis Homer getting important carries at times and he's not able to get it done. Homer's been very good in pass protection, but as a runner, as a running back, it's not happening. Uh, 2.2 points per game. My comment's not popping up on Shervin's account. Oh, they're not? Okay, yeah, I'm going to stop. You guys keep me going on this. I'm going to end up on this till 12 at night. All right. We have gotten through all of the questions. I've hit the end of the chat. I salute all of you. We had so many donations. I can't even remember everybody. Randall McGann, Barry Saturo, D Nugget came in there with it. We had first guy doing his first, I think D Nugget had his first donation. We had, I don't know if it's Shervin, somebody else. I'm missing people as far as who gave, oh yeah, Y2KH with the donation. Thank you so much. Boom Shakalaka with the donation, his first donation. My goodness, you guys. Everybody was so kind on this stream. You hung in there with me. I think we've got the stream issues figured out. I can just pull out the mic and replug it in if I lose audio. Thank you, everybody, for hanging with me on that. If you're watching this in post, you're watching this right now, please do hit the like button, hit the subscribe button. If you're not always subscribed, I don't do clickbait videos. It doesn't cost you anything to subscribe to this channel. Helps out my growth tremendously as we're on the road now to 5,000 subscribers. If you know somebody who's a Seahawks fan, please tell them to subscribe. It helps me out here, man. If we can get to an eventual point, my long-term goal is to do this thing full time. We're a long ways off from being there, but bit by bit, step by step, as we get on this journey and go forward again there, eventually we will arrive there. And once I get to doing this full time, look out. The floodgates open, man. I'm going every day hard on this thing. So I appreciate your guys' support. Thank you so much to everybody. I love you guys. Don't you